Record on your own. Don't need the reminder anymore.
Oh, I'm trained now. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. What are we at? Like last 19 or something, 20? I'm getting good training through this. So share a screen. So I've been gosh, Shravan, what are the nakshatra? Um, I love this quote I found by Virginia Woolf, and to me it really says everything about Shravan. I am rooted, but I flow. Shravan is very square. It really is. It's really, really square, but and it's very conservative as well, but it does change slowly, very slowly. To me, Shravan is this image of well, it's the sticks and stones of Saturn, is a lot of the ground and the sticks and stones of Saturn. That's a lot of what we find in Shravan. But it's very much just that. If we think of if we think of this as being Capricorn and we've got Cancer sitting across from it, Cancer's that water, right? Cancer's the water, it's moving, and Shravan is like the mountain that the water has to move around, right? The Cancer is the moving thing, and Shravan is that unyielding mountain in the middle. But slowly, slowly, the water does erode at the mountain, right? It does move mountains eventually, so but it's very slow. Um, and so that's sort of Shravan. I also got sort of this images of Shravan of well, we also get like the great expanses of time because things are moving quite slow here. And so I really got a sense of something like the great floods that come and then it recedes. And Shravan's almost that sediment after the well, we'll get to the stuff. So so well let's just say it. So it's like after the chaos, Shravan is coming in and setting order. Right? So it's after the great flood hits and that tide recedes, and what's left there now can be ordered. And so it's even like after the battle, right? Everybody goes out and sort of collects the bodies. There's a bit of, I think there's a bit of battlefield's kind of interesting place because ancient battlefields, anyways, modern battlefields are really brutal. Um, but ancient battlefields, sort of in the daytime, it was this brutal place where if you step out on the battlefield, you're almost certain to die. But at nighttime, it was a field of peace. Everybody could go out there and they could mingle and mix as they collected their dead. There was this kind of honor that was also on the battlefield that we don't have anymore in wars, right? Um, and that would go the same with business, the same with Shravan is a little bit like if Cancer is home where you're nice and cozy and comfortable, Shravan is the streets. It's hard. It's tough. It's not comfortable. So that's Shravan. It's rolled by the moon. Uh, and so it is. It's a lot like Pushya. It's kind of the opposite of Pushya, really. That Saturn moon sort of mixing there. And so it's a star of learning. This connects it with Saraswati. The power to make connections is here. Uh, the main symbol being the ear, the three uneven footprints, the trident. Much is made in this thing about listening. There's obviously a lot of music here. I'm still trying to sort that out because to me it seems like a very specific kind of music. Seems like a lot of sort of music engineers have this as well. Certainly lots of engineers, lots of physicists. This is the square. There's rules here, man. These are the hard sciences in a sense, right? This isn't just your wishy-washy social sciences. These aren't your astrologers talking about Saraswati. There's rules. Of course, there is an astrology too, but we do a lot of talking about Saraswati. So, and that's almost like that's kind of what Shravan is. It's hard. It's got rules, man. There's like you can't really deviate from them. But there's Saraswati we got to talk about as well. There's this, anyways. You have to be able to adjust yourself with Shravan. So it's that one who limps. It's in Capricorn. Much is made of the knee and the knee joints, maybe even those connective tissues. that are in there, especially something like Mars in Capricorn where it's exalted. I do expect a lot of knee injuries there. Any kind of affliction to Mars is certainly gonna bring out more knee injuries. You see a lot of athletes, dancers, fighters, musicians. A lot of people are really on their knees, really on their feet a lot, um, as well. So so we get Vishnu here. Vishnu and Saraswati, they kind of go together. Um, Vishnu is the one who maintains, he organizes. And that's exactly what Shravans do. There's a sense I haven't really had time to really get into this side of it, but I was kind of wondering because I saw the Great Flood sort of idea. So that's like Vishnu one, and so they've got the 10 avatars of Vishnu. And even when I start looking through the people who have Shravan, it's very, very difficult to sort this out because I'm looking at these names. God, they're all so different. What the hell do these people have in common? So my theory is there's 10 different kinds of Shravan. Um, and so anyways, that sort of makes me feel better about my lack of knowledge. Um, but but that's not a great theory because Shravan is really concerned with the number three much more than it is with the number 10. And that's kind of the body, mind, spirit, sattvic, rajas, tamas. There's all kinds of threes that we use. It's such an important number. The trisul, the trident is here. This is also Shiva, of course. This is interesting too because Shravan's really, it's the earth. It's like one of the most earthy places. But that trident is always also like it's watery. It's like Shiva. It's like Tantra. It's kind of watery and wet, even though they're like tantrics are kind of jerks. They're also kind of watery. Um, they're hard but soft. It's kind of in a way what we're going through in yoga, to a certain degree, right? It's firmly seated in the self, but yet able to move and interact with the world. So I threw Apollo with a big question mark. I want to keep that question there. We have secondary symbols. The arrow is also important. That shape, I think, it's a lot to do with the mountain shape. I was talking about that a little bit. I think we're kind of moving into the shape in Uttarashad, but we get more of that arrow shape, the pyramid shape. One of the things I really noticed with Shravan, nice, neat rows. They really like things lined up. Nice, neat lines. Everybody just line up, order, everybody order. You see some judges with this, you can just picture them, order in my court. You know, quite a few cops have placements here, of course. The whole law and order thing comes in here. Uh, Farmers. It's interesting. I'm looking for farmer birth times, and they're very difficult. The kind of farmers you find on Astro Databank and stuff, these are the guys who have made it into politics. These are some of them, and a lot of them do have some sort of Shravan placements. But I think there's a whole demographic, like how many farmers come to astrologers, for example, right? And so we got to we got to find the farmer's wife astrologer to get that. So number three, we got the story of King Bali. I don't know if you know this. This is again one of Vishnu's avatars. He comes as the dwarf. Um, and you get a little bit, you get some shorter people, the farmers, and you get this with that squareness, right? So whenever you're doing like palmistry and reading people's body and stuff, I find it funny in India, really notice people's feet, right? Everybody's feet are just hanging out. And you can see the farmers have these really square feet. Same with the hands. They're not, you can see how my fingers kind of go tuk, 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 like this. Farmers can be like, their fingers almost come together like that. They're really, and their toes too. And so I think that's a Shravan thing. So it rolls over jugglers, the ever active, the efficient, the energetic, the righteous, and devotees to Lord Vishnu and the truthful. The jugglers, I think here, it's like, okay, these are physical jugglers. A lot of, especially with Mars here, right? Of course, people with superpower and farmer power, right? We all know what that's like. The skinny little farmer picks up the tractor with one hand while he's smoking with the other one. Um, but there's that. but jugglers, this is also the administrative side of things. Is the is the is the jugglers. These people are juggling a lot of different things. There's almost like this chaos that's going on around them, and the Shavanas are unmoved by it. They're that solid one. Their kind of head is up above the water somehow. They're never drowning. They're always good. No problem. So you get that sort of thing. That efficiency is really here. Again, that's really the thing with Mars. It's tuk, 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 tuk. It's really following systems in a way. It's quite systematic in its approach. That's again why Mars is so effective here, because when our activity follows a system, wow, there's no break in between. It's from this thing to that thing to that thing to that thing. It's like there's a system there. You know what to do next all the time. Uh, so it's like that. Come down to here. Yeah, there's the battlefield. We'll just kind of, I don't have all these written down below, so I just want to see some of them. Yeah, go ahead, Emmett.
Yeah, it's and like to link it back to the music too, and you're saying like they're all different. Um, my Venus is in Shravana, and kind of what comes to mind is the value of maintaining patterns and pattern notification. So it's remembering the cycles and being able to repeat the cycles. And I feel a need to
Yeah,
understand the patterns all the time. And I value keeping that same consistency. So I feel like that can apply in any field, in any kind of reality. So
yeah,
I can jump into any world in a way and identify the pattern there and optimize myself in a way by
yeah.
listening to what the pattern is.
Well, this is kind of like the farmer, for example. They're unmoving. Every year is the exact same thing. In the spring they do this, and then that, and then that, and that, and they're following the set pattern. But at the same time, every year is completely different. Um, and so it is. It's able to adjust to that difference by following those patterns. And with Venus there, it would be with the harmony, and it would be real love for those patterns as well. A real appreciation for that. So we'll come down to that as we go. Uh, this is these nakshatras are so annoying. This is Vishnu, but here it's Brahma, it's creation. Um, and they do this to us all the time, of course. Uh, and there is that creative aspect. It's like the farmer is the one who maintains things. Right? India's wonderful for this. They made the same motorbike for over 50 years, the same cars, those old, you don't really get the ambassadors anymore, the same bicycles, the same motorbikes. These are things that they could maintain because they kept making the same one for 50 years all over India. You could find parts wherever you wanted. You could keep maintaining these things. And again, part of the purpose of maintaining something is so it doesn't change. So it doesn't, I guess, so it doesn't die, really. But over the course of time, slowly it changes. It's like there's a patch on it there, there's a nick out of it there, there's something added there. So it actually becomes very creative. It's like that farmer creativity. I used to work construction with a bunch of farmers. It was incredible, man. These guys just blew my mind with how creative they actually were, right? Like just make something out of nothing in a way. Really, really amazing. So Shovins also have this kind of farmer creativity. Um, I think too, when we think of the music here as well, I did notice it was more of that country down home sort of music. I had some dancers here. They're doing kind of swing dance, the farmer dance stuff, and so it stayed there that way. But so we get to Sage Vishista. We've talked about him in a lot of classes now. Devas, and so these people are a little bit like higher than everybody. They have sort of higher expectations of themselves. Things like this. Um, they really sort of reach for the stars, and well, the eagle is one of the signs of the stars that are here, and so that's that height. That's reaching for the highest peak, the highest pinnacle. These kind of things also come up in here. The what is it? It's like yeah, I talked about that. That sort of land sticking above the chaos. So it's mlecha. This is an outcast. These are the butchers. So Shravan's also, it's kind of like, well, it's kind of like the farmers. It's a hard job in a sense. It's even the administrators. The administrators are sitting in the office and they're crunching numbers, and they're seems like these days, anyways, they seem like all these sweet girls. You go in the office and they're just like happy to have company and stuff. Uh, but these are the ones who are like, these are the ones, they're harsh. It's just numbers, man. Like they need to wipe out and lay off a whole division. It's like axe. They're gone without a thought, right? And so they're pretty, there's that harshness, there's that brutality that comes into, and leaders as well. They're very brutal. They have to make really hard decisions. Throw some people down into chaos and pull some people up above with them. And that's kind of the father as well does that, right? He chooses sort of what children to give attention to, right? We talked about this in other classes, like just leave dumb Jimmy at home and don't worry about him, and smart Alec Marty here, he'll come to work with me, and this kind of thing. There was a lot of that energy as well, like the children who grew up going to work with their parents, often around these sort of older people when they were young, not just sort of like sit down, shut up, and listen. They're very quiet people, Shavans. They can be very quiet. They're just watching and listening, watching and learning. Um, it's like the farmer. He takes his kid to work. He's not actively teaching them, but that learning is going on. So another way just sort of writing about this morning. If we think of cancer, let's try to think of that learning aspect, right? If we think of cancer as the foundational education of the teacher and this sort of thing, Shravan is like the schoolhouse. Shravan is like the infrastructure, right? You got all the roads and streams and pathways and all that sort of stuff as well in Cancer. And in Shravan, you've got the buildings, you've got the obstacles in a sense that have to be gone around. You've got the ordering of the earth. It's kind of there's a sense of space with this, the spatial ability, and this ability of Shravans to sort of order space and put things in their place, really. And so it's quite good at all the construction stuff like that as well. Um, Movable, changeable. We've talked a lot about that energy, and that's um, even though it's very slow change, but it is moving. Artha, it's motivated by wealth. This is kind of like Papa. This is kind of like this is why you go out in the world. This is why we leave the house. To either make money or spend our money. Otherwise, we're quite content in the comforts of our home in a lot of ways. Uh, but this is out in the world. This is that 10th house. You get a job to make some money. You go out and you work for a living, and you get out of your comfort zones here in a sense. You've got to become hard. The battlefield. This is Kushetra. This is where it all takes place in a sense. I don't know how well you guys have read Bhagavad Gita. I know Dana's a big fan of that one, but this is the whole beginning. This is the field of battle. This is the body, mind, and soul. This is where it's all taking place. Um, and so there is chaos there, and you've got to be hard. You've got to be firm. We knees, sex organs, ears. We'll talk a little bit about that as we go down. Uh, Rajasic. This goes very well again with career type places, and that upward mobility is Rajasic is trying to bring change, trying to move from the tamas to the sattvic is what the energy of Rajas is doing for us. Um, Air element, and I think there's that loftiness, there's that heightness of it, despite being very, very grounded. I think it's that sort of height that gives it air. Kapha dosh. This has so much going on, right? It's very grounded, but it's very watery, and it's got the air element there as well. Gender is male. Of course, this is really the Papa energy in a lot of ways. Not the guru Papa, the one waking you up and saying, chop, chop, let's get to work here. Um, Upward facing. So there's a lot of, again, that upward mobility, that rising. There's a constant evolution. Even if it seems like things aren't changing, if it seems like nothing's getting better in your life, This is sort of Shravan is that theory of this constant evolution. We're constantly improving. We're constantly getting better as a human race, sort of idea. The animal is the female monkey, so through its creativity, it can be a little bit crazy. It's even with a farmer. If you watch a farmer go to work, you never really know what they're doing, and it's like they never spend any time in the fields. So you imagine the farmers, out working the fields. They're never out there. You don't know what they're kind of crazy like monkeys in their creativity, right? And they're trying different things and they're doing that, they're doing this other thing. And the archery, we'll talk about that down below. I should be going through these with you because I probably have some interesting stuff, but here we are. So Arca's a milkweed. Milkweeds, just about all the milkweeds relate with Shiva. Um, it's the crown flower. I don't know if you've seen an Arca. You see them quite a bit around, and you see them quite a bit in India and Varanasi. I got some outside my place. They're quite nice. Mosquitoes don't like them, so there's that nice thing about them. But they're these big sort of purpley whitey flowers, sort of thing. These crown flowers. They grow. They grow kind of like in Canada here. We get this fireweed after the fire goes through the very first thing to start growing in that fire, or the very first thing to start growing from a rubbish heap after it's sat a while, is this arca tree starts to come up. And so again, right after all the chaos happens, this arca tree, and quite a beautiful and lovely flower. Um, Ray of light, used a lot in Ganesha pujas, a lot of Ganesha type stuff here. If we think of we've seen the pictures of Shiva Parvati Ganesh. This is kind of like the body, the mind, and the spirit. Shiva's being the spirit. Now, this is something we can kind of use in our own lives and share in subtle ways. It's kind of a subtle way that affects our energy and our space. So typically, like a householder yogi, for example, someone who wants to have a relationship and wants to stay in the world somehow, I generally recommend that they worship the body, mind, and the spirit, right? And they worship so if they're putting an image of Shiva up, they would put the three of them up there. But the people who want to do sannyas, they want to just go off on their own. Um, the the body and the mind aren't important to these people. They're just sannyas, just Shiva alone is all they're going for. The mind does they go crazy, right? Like the agos are going crazy like that. The mind goes, they don't care about their body, they don't care of that. All they're seeing is Shiva. Their whole life goes towards Shiva. So, anyways, we get a little bit of a different thing going on there. Um,
Is
yeah, go ahead.
Shiva represented by the wolf as well?
Well, Shiva's Ardra, and so Ardra is kind of a lone wolfish thing. And there is a bit of that lone wolf. There is a bit of that hunter quality to Shiva. Alone, and he's the hunter. That's Rudra. He's alone in the forest, kind of hunting. Um, it's almost like, well, even like myself, in a sense, if we think of that, like it's the old bachelor, in a sense. And you never know what the old bachelor's up to, whether he's hunting or not, hunting or protecting. You can't tell. It just seems like an old dirty old man in a sense. And that's kind of Shiva, the Steve. He's got the dreadlocks and he strikes fear into most people, but he's benevolent. He's actually there to protect. He's the savior. He's sort of that nobody counts on the hunter suddenly coming out in the forest, right? They're watching for the cops, they're watching for this. And that, in a sense, that's actually really good you brought that up because Ardra is in Gemini, which is the sixth house. It's a 6-8 relationship, Gemini and Capricorn. And so here you've got the cop, where in Ardra you've got the hunter, right? Kind of the vigilante in a sense. And they're kind of opposed to each other. They don't get along very well, actually. So there's that. This is the settlers, the farmers. And in Gemini, you get those hunters, you get the nomads, the tribal people, right? They're coming, they're stealing my cows, these bloody natives, right? Um, so that's kind of a way we can sort of put Shravan into perspective with Ardra and why it doesn't get along with Gemini partially as well. So yeah, the wolf is I don't want to say the opposite energy, but it's that contrarian energy from Shravan.
Yeah, and I asked the question too because like I relate with Shiva, and I think we all do here in some way. But I have this poncho and it has three wolves on it, and I'm thinking there's not a lot of things with three wolves on it, kind of thing. So I'm just thinking like it relates with the Shravan energy that I've got this three wolf poncho. So I don't know. It's
Hmm.
just it seems connected. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I would generally think wolves would be more connected with the Ardra. The number three would maybe take a little less precedence, but maybe it is. It's that doing battle with the self, right? The hunter on the field kind of thing. In a way, it's like the hunter doesn't like the field because he's exposed there, right? The hunter wants to stay in the forest. Same with the deer, same with the wolf, same with those Gemini. Even the cow wants a bit of shelter in a sense, wants to go out and graze out there. But so yeah, that's
My Jupiter's in Ardra, and my Venus is in Shravana.
yeah. Well, you've got that expansion of wolves. There's your three wolves with Jupiter. And who's in Shravan? Venus? Oh, your gurus are fighting with each other.
Yeah,
Yeah,
all the
yeah,
time. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Your gurus are in a bad angle with each other. But they're both in Shiva places, so there you go. The wild man and the farm are a little bit mixed. So Krishna's gopis approach the Arka plant to inquire Krishna's whereabouts. Although it's an insignificant plant, it always grows near Shiva. Arka is the world in which is translated as copper. Uses Shakta worship and venerated the most excellent Kaula trees give accomplishment and liberation. They're said to be full of yoginis, siddhas, lords of heroes, hosts, and gods and demons. The Arka plant should be treated with the utmost respect. Don't touch them with the feet. Don't urinate or defecate or sleep or have sex under them. They should be worshipped and praised regularly as their own fruits and flowers. So I think this, in a sense, this is sort of pointing to all the plants that we eat and we grow. They all have yogis and siddhas and heroes and hosts and demons and gods and all of that stuff. And even the buildings that we raise up and the energy of the land in a certain sense. I think that's what this is kind of pointing out. And in a way, the fertility of the land as well. Uh, so like this, celestial wish fulfilling tree. Uh, it's one of the things about Arca. Shravan people, there's this insignificance. And there is a sort of, well, we see a lot of leaders with Shravan, but a lot of times they come from the insignificance. It's a sort of, it's like the farmers. It's like taken as a whole, each farmer is kind of insignificant. When you put them in and consider the whole like system of agriculture, for example, it's like, wow, it's amazing. It's a really big thing. Um, and so there's a lot of power there that way, even though there is a kind of insignificance to it. We'll cruise through here. We got a couple of Pushkara Amshas, or I guess one Pushkara Amsha. Um, this would be what the third pad, I believe. Mark that off. We'll see when we get on. Birth star of Saraswati. We get Vishnu here. This is just that organizing, operating, sustaining, preserving, conserving. Um, I started to look up some of these words, like the conservation, for example. It's more like it's when we use something. It's like if you conserve a piece of land, you're still using it. You're just trying not to make sure it doesn't deplete completely. Whereas when you preserve something, it's more unchanging. It's more that unyielding nature of it to preserve. And so I think you're going to get more of that preservation, for example, when Saturn is here, right? It's going to be more unyielding. Um, and we get like serve is a word that sort of came up a lot, like conserve, preserve, deserve. And it is a deserving nakshatra. You're not going to get any fruit in this nakshatra unless you earn it, unless you work for it. Uh, and that's like the farmer. The farmer's not going to eat unless he sacrifices now in the spring and puts these stupid seeds in the ground that's like nothing's happening. He doesn't know if it's going to rain or what's going to happen to him or if he's even going to survive. But he has to sacrifice now and he has to look forward to the future and try to be prepared for it. And these people usually are, they're very good working with chaos. They don't get knocked off. I mentioned these were some of my brainchilds of the last week. The 10 avatars of Vishnu, I haven't worked on this, but Noah's Ark kept coming up again and again. God's decision to return the universe to a pre-creation state of watery chaos and remake it through the microcosm in Noah's Ark. This also seemed to come up in this a bit. The Ark, the boat, again, that thing that's sticking up above the water, above the chaos. And so it's like the strong leader is like the boat that will carry us through chaos. If we just have a strong leader, someone who's thinking about the future, someone who's been keeping things up and keeping things maintained, and that person will carry us to the future. Wonderful. Um, the three footprints. This is often also kind of uneven footprints. They talk about a lot of knee problems in here, some limping, some unevenness of the gait. And this is sort of like, this is what I said about the seasons. Every season is the same, right? It's like every step, one after the other. It's the same step, same step, same step, but it's uneven. There's an unevenness to it. It's not quite the same. So I think that sort of puts to that. Um, yeah, I don't know if you know this, Paul, and this is a Canadian thing. I don't know if Christians all over the world do this, but there's Canadians have this thing in their home. It's little, always in the kitchen, footprints. That's a nice picture, a few footprints on the beach, and it's a little poem or a parable um, about like, oh my God, God, why have you forsaken me in my time of need? You know, we were walking together. You could see both our footprints, and then there was only one set of footprints. God, you left me. What? Just when I needed you most, what happened? And the end, it's God's like, well, there was only one set of footprints because I was carrying you. And so it's this idea as well of God carrying us through these hard times or having the strength to move through these hard times kind of things. It's a really beautiful thing. I should add it in here actually. It's a beautiful parable. I recommend looking it up. I butchered it. I haven't read it in 20 years probably, so I hey, um it's like God, why hast thou forsaken me? And God's like, you idiot. So the footprints are significant also for tracking. Tracking the clever signs that left behind by humans and animals. It's like a part of our essence kind of gets left behind, our stamp left on the ground. Same as what a farmer is doing, right? Kind of leaving his mark. Uh, these people also want to leave their mark as well. Uh, so uh, yeah, taking the first steps in fresh snow, that remarkable experience, that kind of thing. Um, there is a little bit of this. I wonder if that's why there's so many serial killers out this. Uh, because I think there is a sort of sense of Shravans, they're butchers. They'll desecrate what is pure. Right? It's like the farmer. He'll go out there and he'll chop down and clear that forest to make his mark, to make his land there. Um, and so I think there is some of that going on in here, that desecration of what's pure, right? The taking of the virgin, the first step, the well, again, the stories of Manu, the first man in Vedic tradition, they're very much like the stories of Noah as well, right? They come up that first flood, and Vishnu kind of carries, and he's got the fish for horn, and he takes the first man to the one mountain that's sticking up above the water, and then Manu makes his mark on the world. There's a lot of that, some of that Prajapati as well, that fathering quality here as well. Um, a bit of the yeah, there's a bit of a plow, the clearing of the land and things like this. So um, it also wouldn't. it also wouldn't surprise me if early humans began covering their feet before they covered their genitals. And did we cover our genitals for protection or for shame? I'd rather the shame came much later, though it's still suggestive of our vulnerabilities. And so there's a kind of um, yeah, a bit of a cover up here too. This is moving into, uh, sorry, my mind just blank. This is moving into Danishta. Uh, so Danishta is we're starting to kind of cover things over, I think, too. It's moving towards that Danishta, and then we'll get into Satabishak, which is the covering with some holes in it. Um, so like that, it's like even I think the airiness of this, and we talked about the vaults in the heavens and the eagle that flies up in the heavens. And this is sort of that, even that covering, I think, right? It's what covers the land, but what covers, it's like the atmosphere in a sense, or there's some layers. There's some meteorologists who have this placement who are studying more of the atmospheric science. Um, but all of that comes in. I think again, it's that's maybe the study of the seasons, right? So that can move into more meteorology and more of that side of things, the scientific side as well. Um, got some quotes there. Let's just scroll through that. Sarasvati, this goddess of learning, art, music. She's said to live on the tip of the tongue, providing the creative energy and inspiration. The Sara, the essence, and the Svati, and the wind. And this is sort of like it's like the mountain top, like the tip, right? And so it's there's that side of it here as well. Um, you're listening. It's sort of it's not hearing. Shravan is listening. There's a difference because Shravan is absorptive. It can absorb. It's like the ground. You put water and it'll absorb as much water as it can until it's full. And then that water will just start there, whatever's excess will just run off. But it's not absorbing, it's listening to hear, listening with attention, listening to really pick up what people are putting down. Um, so and this sort of helps us with the equilibrium. This is also like this is the leader that sort of listens to his people, can adjust to a certain degree with the people. See a lot of like this is famous for being a conservative placement, and it is quite conservative. But even the conservatives that have this placement, uh, they would be a little bit more on the progressive end of the conservatives to a certain degree because they're willing to bend. They're willing to sort of like make things work. Um, they're very practical in a sense, right? And so if they think, right, some hot button issue is not going to get them elected, they're going to be practical about that and adjust and yeah, listen to what people are saying. So this is it's a very passive receptive nakshatra. It's kind of like it really is kind of like that little boy sitting in. He's with his parents. They're working. He's sitting in the corner, being quiet, just absorbing everything. Really. So they're very passive, very receptive, very quiet, sort of people. You almost you almost can't tell if they're listening. They can be really become like the fly on the wall sort of thing. In a way, too, it's like the eagle flying so high up there, you don't even see them. You don't even realize you're being watched. You don't even realize you're being listened to, in a sense. And that's the shaman. They're there, but they're quiet. Um, we can never tell if someone is hearing or listening unless they also engage. I hear you. I got it. I'm picking up what you're laying down. There is that side to listening as well. Listening is it's passive, but there's an active side to listening, and I think that's Shravan is in another sense. It's sitting still and being quiet and listening, but it's actively listening. It's actively putting out the attention, putting out like the antenna sort of thing, putting that out there so you can pick it up. And so it's quite engaging that way. There's a lot of humility also in Shravan, the silent stillness focus. Um, there's a sense with the ear, like, can you lend me an ear? Can you listen to me? There's that helpfulness here as well, like the working together. Um, here, there's that healing side of just being heard. You know what I mean? It's like in relationships. You hear that, oh, you're not listening to me. You don't listen. You hear these kind of things between I don't hear it, but television tells me this happens. But it's like, oh, you don't listen. And it's sort of this when someone's listening, when we feel like we're heard, it's a beautiful thing. That alone is healing. Nobody has to do anything. Just listen, right? Just hear me out, kind of ideas. And so it's quite a lovely lovely practice. So, and this is kind of a spiritual practice, this idea of listening, and I do this at the end of Shavasana, when I bring people back into their awareness. And it's sort of like one of those things is like, listen to the sounds and have your ears reach out to the subtlest sounds as far as they can go. Open your eyes, and yeah, it's nice when you got people on their back and they're out, nice that bright blue sunny day, and it's like, look up into the sky and see out as far as you can see. Right? Shravan wants to go to all those sort of limits. It wants to really reach out with everything. But then it's like you bring that awareness, and then you bring all that awareness comes back to the self. This is the field. This is the infrastructure kind of thing that can hear, that can see, that can do all of this. So again, I like to bring people's awareness back to all their senses, sort of thing. Um, it might be noted that deafness is often associated with feelings of isolation. Uh, like Def Ashlesha crawling into his hole. Shaman would be the opposite of this. They're hearing everything, listening to everything, like the fly on the wall. That genetic speaking deafness comes later in life because one did not feel they were ever picking. Oh yeah, this is some energetic reasons for. So some people, they say go deaf because they feel like they were none of the information they were getting on the outside world was useful or helpful to them. Um, and so eventually their ears just start blocking out the outside world. They start to go more and more and more inward, more just listening to the self sort of idea. Um, there's a lot of the obedience here. The Bible sort of mentions speaking into thine ear, reading into thine ear. And this is again like speaking so you're heard, speaking so people pay attention. So it's like get up on the podium, get up on the highest piece of ground you can find and speak from there so people can hear you, so your voice goes out there. Um, he who has an ear to hear, let him listen. There's a famous story by Jesus sticks fingers in the man's ear, and after spitting and touching his tongue, he pronounces word ephata. No way I pronounced that correctly. Be open, um, is what it means. And I found some lovely, like the way they talked about this. And apparently the Bible usually keeps this word in there because this is an actual sort of word from Jesus in a sense, and so it brings people closer. And he mentions this a few times. He says it to the deaf man. He puts his fingers in the air. He says, "Be open," and then he looks up. A few minutes later, he looks up to the heavens, and kind of with this sigh, with this groan, and he kind of looks up to the heavens. He says it again to the heavens, and so there's this idea in Shravan where we have to remain open. Um, this is maybe what I would say is like we hear these silly advice like listen to yourself, listen to others, listen. I think better advice for Shravan is to be open. Keep yourself open to the world. No way I pronounced that right. But anyways, words of Jesus. So there's an inner closing which covers our deepest core in the person, what the Bible calls the heart. It's what Jesus came to open, to liberate, to connect. And so that's the heart that stays open. That's how we connect with other people is through the heart. So right after he did this, he looked up to the heavens and groaned. He said, affected again to the heavens. Interpreters are careful to remind us this is one of the few actual words, and from the literary context, it's meant to bring us closer to the protagonist, show us the kind of close and intimacy he had with healing clients. He himself, the link between the earth and the heavens, like the eagle that soars higher and higher until it disappears. We might note the speaker looks a little like ears. Shravan, um, yeah, speakers as well, projecting that out. Shravan themselves might have amplifiers. There's an amplification quality, I think, as well, the Shravan. Everything's sort of coming together. They're gathering up all the resonance. Um, I think that was sort of happening in Uttar Falguni. All the different resonances, all the different streams from everywhere were coming into this one place. And Shravan kind of amplifies it, takes in what everybody is saying, listens to everybody, and then amplifies that message, the what's everybody saying, sort of distills it and amplifies it. Distillation. That word in mind, distillation. I don't think so, but there is a sense of bringing things. It's even the mountain. It's like brings things to their point. It brings things. It almost seems to be summing things up in a way. Distillation's maybe not a great word here, but there is that overall summary. Um, so this is the eagle. In another myth, Aphrodite takes the form of eagle, pretends to pursue Zeus, who had taken the form of the swan. Uh, so the girl he liked would give him shelter. So while this is a bit of trickery, Garuda, we see the half eagle, the half human. At least they say he's half eagle. Uh, the mother of the mount, the enemy of the snakes. I think again, there's that we get that Ashlesha in Cancer, and here we get the eagle, and it's maybe not fully an enemy. It's like an opponent more than an enmity. I guess it's that always that opponent, that one you're always sort of having to negotiate with somehow. And there was, if you read the stories about Garuda and the snakes, I can't remember how the story went exactly, but Garuda was quite nice. He didn't want to kill all these snakes, and so eventually the snakes agreed to give him a sacrifice. I have nothing about that here. Um, but anyway, so eventually they decided to sacrifice, and so they gave him so many snakes. And so Garuda and the snakes are actually friends, even though he eats snakes. So go figure. It's like our wife. It's like our wife. She's always trying to eat us. She just wants to take everything we have. But we're friends. We get along, right? It's kind of we're trying to take her for everything she's got as well. And that's kind of what husband and wife are like in a way. They're trying to get everything they can out of the other person. They want to milk that person dry, basically, as much as they can. But we're friends. Oh, we're good. We're happy, right? Did you clean the house? Did you make my lunch? Did you do this? Did you do that? Why didn't you do any of that stuff? There's laws, there's order here. You have to do this, right? Kind of for each other in a sense. So, um, as long as you both get us, you milk that person and they milk you, as long as you're drinking about the same amount of milk, it's all right. So when one person's drinking a bunch of milk and the other person's got some putrid water, that's where you get problems. So the ears, the inner ears, I kind of went into this. There's also we go into the ear. There's like the I should have the I really need the picture of it here because there's these circular canals that almost look like trumpets, right? They open up, and that's that amplification. I think that's also happening here. There's a little eardrum as well in there. There's a whole band in the eardrum, basically helping us hear sounds. Uh, Hearing aids, tinnitus. There's a hyperaceus. I'm not pronouncing that right either. This is a loss of tolerance for everyday sounds. I'm not sure exactly how this fits into Strauben, but I found it very interesting going in this because I'm a deaf guy. And I've always found this very, very strange. And I never really thought about it till recently. I'm deaf, but I can't stand noise. It goes into me and cuts like just, oh, I can't deal with it. And that I think is this hyperacesis, loss of tolerance for everyday sounds. They seem too loud. They dominate the person's space. They typically has nothing to do with the actual hearing ability, since even hard of hearing people have this. this is what I found interesting. Subconsciously, there's an over attention to sound or one's surrounding in general due to one's feeling that one has to be alert to the sound and dangers around them. And so I find this a little bit with hearing because I'm deaf. I'm a little bit hypersensitive to sound in a way. So if I'm out and I hear someone yelling, or if I'm even in the home and I hear someone make a voice, I always have to turn and look. I have to hear that sound and turn and put my awareness on it. And so there's a sort of could see, like, I don't know, I can't hear anything. Maybe they're talking to me. I ignore people all the time. I feel bad for this, but it's just part of being a deaf guy. And so there's a hyper attention to sound, which is kind of like contrary to what's the deafness. Um,
This is
but
so
it's
funny, Mike, because I have this. I have moon in Shravana. I cannot stand sounds. They hurt me. And what you write here about the subconsciously, there's an over attention. It's literally me. I am literally attentive to sounds because I always, since I was small, I'm anxious about dangers and I
yeah,
am very aware. And the funny thing is, Hinton has his son in Shravana, and not only he's like super attentive to sound, he has, I always say like a joke, he has the superpower. Like he hears something and I tell
pinpoint.
him like, what is that? And he's like, the drop falling in the bucket of the neighbor's house. Like he
Oh
knows exactly, like literally like things like that. And I
wow,
am the one that has, they're like, oh my God. And it's true, you know, like the drop in a copper bucket, I don't know what, and in a boat living, both of us with Shravana. I
yeah,
feel very seen about everything you've said today. And even Hinton and I are so different. He has the sun in Shravana and Mercury, and I have my moon. But everything you're writing
okay,
about Shravana, it's amazing.
yeah. Well, that's why
Yeah.
the sun and moon and Shravana, that's really what brings you guys together so well. Like that's a really nice combination for partners to have the sun and moon on each other. You really reflect his power, essentially. Um, so yeah, very nice combination that way. Yeah, that's it's interesting that sort of hypersensitivity that comes. It's like again, it's quite literally like being in the boat. And so any wave, you feel that in a boat, right? Like someone just like throws something over the shore and you feel the boat does that a little bit. So that's that hypersensitivity going on there. So we'll also get probably some placements. I wouldn't be surprised if we find some tinnitus and different things like this. Rahu and Shravan third house. I'm pretty sure we could guarantee tinnitus. Um, for example, there's it's also through our years, that's an equilibrium as well. It wants to keep balanced, it wants to keep level, whereas you get some of this going on. Um, yeah, go ahead, Emmett.
Yeah, just from hearing Dana's story, thank you for sharing that. And Mike, you have placements in Shravana as well, right? I think you're saying.
In my, I think I've got my Jupiter and Navamsha is in Shravan.
Okay. Yeah, because like I'm relating a lot to this as well, but my sun and moon is not there, and like I said, for me it would be my Venus. So I'm curious though because my moon is in Danishta and my sun is in Uttara Ashada. So it's I don't know if like astrology isn't, I don't know, correct me if I'm wrong here. This is kind of a question at the same time, but because the energy that I have in my chart is a lot there or in that general area, does that kind of like you can kind of get the a bit of the attributes of the nakshatras before and after your own nakshatra? Or is the Venus really that prominent? Because for me too, like when someone sends me a voice note, I don't want to listen to it because I feel I'm getting too much information. Where I just want them to send me a text so I can read it. I don't want to listen to them, kind of thing. Like for me to listen to someone, I really need to want to make space for them because I feel I'm getting so much more information when I'm listening that it can get overwhelming sometimes. So for me, like if you want to talk to me, send me a message to link up for me to listen. Don't send me a voice note. And that's a sensitivity, right? At the end of the day. But again, I just have Venus there. But I'm relating a lot with what you're all saying. I don't have the strength that Dana has or her partner, I'm assuming, has. So I'm kind of curious how that kind of works out. Does that make sense as a question or a comment?
Yeah, what I would say was, well, it kind of makes sense. I'll try to answer. What I would say with that is because you've got planets in sort of all three nakshatras of Capricorn, is what you're saying. Uh, and so really what this does is it sort of that broad range of what Capricorn is, like Venus loves the order. It loves symbols of order, symbols of that as well. Um, you remember those stupid plastic things you had in your van, and I was like, these things are stupid. That's Venus, this plasticky kind of flimsy kind of order. Um, so that's kind of Venus. Other planets and the other positions will bring more order to that, bring more solidity to that, more firmness to your, I don't know, to your ability to lead,
But
I
it's
guess.
pretty, so I'm okay with it, right?
Yeah, well, it's working for you, I guess, right? Yeah. Um, but yeah, it like it looks good. You're happy with it, so yeah, go for it. But that is kind of Venus. Venus is weak, right? Venus is very plastic and flexible and um, not very strong. So like Venus isn't that great in Capricorn. It's kind of a weak leader when you get Venus there. Um, because they're what they're doing, it's like if Shravan is the amplifier, it's taking in and it's amplifying that one sort of message. Venus, things get too watery, a little bit sort of muddy. There's no sort of clarity in the message. It's trying to speak to everyone, right? Trying to make everyone happy, sort of idea with Venus is there. And you can't make everybody happy. A leader, you can't lead that way. It's just it's asking for disaster. Um, so so that kind of thing. And it's the same thing I told you about your stupid plastic flimsy shelf. You're asking for disaster. It's going to just come crashing down one day, and that'll be that. Um, sorry, I give you a hard time a long time for those plastic shelves.
Yo, I'm living my best life. It's good with me, man. Yeah.
Yeah, well, that's it. Yeah, you make do, and that's kind of Shravan too, right? They use what's available. They adjust to make things work how whatever. So you do that, and then when it's time to fix it or time to maintain it or time to keep it, do the upkeep, you'll have some new shelves. You'll do that. So that's Shravan as well. Um, So the shaman, traditional oral knowledges. It's funny we all have Shravan here, and you guys have the patience to listen to a 3 hour lecture. You guys are like superpowers. Really are. Not many people could do this at all, I don't think. Um, so they'll absorb that energy from their environment the way dry ground absorbs water. Working with the truth religion scholars, see a lot of people working with classical studies, a lot of language people. Again, that's that structure of language, I think, is what they like. Uh, you do see some news broadcasters, again, people who amplify a message, gossip columnists, recording. That's again, the musicians come into that because I think again they're amplifying messages. Storytellers, counselors, people who have to listen. It's like they sit here and they listen to their client go on for an hour, and then they go, "Oh, so what you're telling me is," and they sum it up in 2 words. Um, that's kind of that ability of Shravan as well. They're kind of like taking care of business in a sense. So this also works for some charitable organizations and this kind of thing. Anyone who's sort of who's just dealing with sound, with listening, with hearing, with any of this sort of stuff. The pulse of public opinion. Again, these people have the ability to absorb what's going on around them, and so they know what the public wants. They can listen to everyone. They're good, very good at marketing then as well. They become good at managing any kind of campaigns, historians, regulators, inspectors, examiners. See that blue collar side comes out. God, so many engineers have placements here. A gazillion engineers have placements here. Very strong for engineering. And these are sort of the people that are making the structures, right? Putting nice, straight, neat lines on their page, that sort of thing. A lot of electrical engineers. I think this is like laying everything out in the lines to a certain degree. Something that bothered me with this a little bit, it's that Gemini Capricorn thing again, because Gemini and Mikrashirsha is the map, has a lot to do with maps and mapping things out. But I felt like Shravan also seemed to have a lot to do with that, but not like I don't know if it was the blueprints or what it is, but it's like the maps of Shravan are more nice, neat rows in a sense, right? They're laid out in a very orderly sort of way, where I think the maps in Migrashirsh are like maps of the land, maps of the world, right? There's no straight lines on those maps. Whereas the maps of Shravan are kind of, they're orderly. They're trying to make order. So maybe it's more like, I don't know, the map of a, of a building, those blueprints, the layouts of, so a lot of electrical engineers have this placements as well. And so I think there's a lot to do with that laying of things out. Again, the organizing of the ground around us.
Could it be also like mind maps? Because in university, I was famous. I studied history of art, and there used to be like maybe 300 churches for class or images. And my schematics were famous because I used to get all the information and then, like maybe 6 months, I'd put it in one sheet of paper, like in a
Yeah,
schematic way. And that sheet of paper is what you study for the exam. And
thematic. That's probably a very good word to use here. Schematics. Yeah, and so
schematics,
it's,
yeah, I'm obsessed.
yeah. And so that's that Shavan, just really putting everything into order. Uh, it's like my Jupiter goes into Shravan and the Navamsha. And so really this whole Nakshatra project, I'm trying to put all my knowledge and wisdom into order. I'm trying to put it in there. And it's not maybe the greatest way. That's why Jupiter's not great in Shravan, because it's probably not the greatest way to treat knowledge. Because there is something inherently disorderly about it. But anyways, I'm doing my best. Uh, doing what I can, working with what I've
And we
got.
love it. Love it.
Yeah. Um, yeah, no, it's this project's been just amazing. Not just for learning about the nakshatras, but my whole understanding of life too. It's just gone boom through this. Um, so where were we here? Announcers, presenters, a lot of promoters have this. Again, that sense of amplifying, I think, a message. Uh, they can be vision of protecting their reputation, showing open contempt for those who speak badly of this can lead to spreading gossip, dishonesty, protecting oneself. There is a bit of overly defensiveness with these folks. Again, they're kind of unyielding. They don't want to move. And so if you're pushing them, right, and you're making them move, you're making them change, you're bringing chaos into their order, they're going to bite back a little bit. They're going to be like, hey, watch. So there's that. Um, Again, it's kind of that engineering mind in a sense. They just want everything in order. It's what I say a lot of times, the difference between a Western astrology and a Vedic astrologer. Vedic astrologers are engineers. Western astrologers are pink-haired girls selling candles. Um, I love pink-haired girls selling candles, by the way. I'm not, it's not a diss at all. I love them. So it's probably why I'm single. So preservation, politeness, propriety, that sense of propriety as well comes in, the sense of public opinion, a lot to do with like reputation as well and gossip, right? The Shravan, someone who's got a leadership position, their biggest enemy is the gossip and all that crap of Gemini, blah, 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 blah. what are they saying about me, and spinning that around. Um, Preservation of history, culture preservation, what's most essential. And that's really it. It's that coming back to that essence of Saraswati, right? So coming back to what's essential and amplifying that, getting that message out in a sense. So sensitive to rhythm, pace, tone. They typically have a measured and very patient tone. They might involve the regulating of seasonal flows, celebration of festivals, cultural ambassadors. I don't know much about music. I've never been much of a musician. Um, I played trumpet when I was a kid, though, and I dropped out of piano classes very soon. But there's this thing about music that's also kind of like the seasons in a way. It's like you have this nice steady rhythm, this nice steady beat in the music, but there's all these little change ups that they do, right? There's these little changing, they put a different rhythm and they put a different thing in there like that. And so that's also where the music of Shravan and the sound of Shravan, it's sort of that layer. That's another thing that came up all the time with this, that sense of layering, layers after layers after layers. Um, that was a lot of geologists had this. That's those are the ones who really helped me to find these layers. And so there's things that are buried with Shravan as well. Some buried skeletons in the closet and things that really some secrets can go very, very deep in here as well, because they're just so far buried. Um, yeah, go ahead, Emmett.
Yeah, it sounds like it'd be really good like for astrology as well, because astrology is all about the patterns of the planets and the moon, but then the underlyings of like, oh, Mercury's there that time. Oh, Venus is there that time.
It really is. You get a lot of it's really good actually for the early astrologers. It's really good for astronomy, right? Because you're following those steady patterns, but you're analyzing the differences in those patterns. And so, yeah, it's good for astrologers as well that way. But really, I think more the scientific side of it
Yeah,
really comes in.
right.
Is that engineering mind that Vedic astrologers especially have. Uh, Again, even here, it's like this whole nakshatra project. I'm trying to extract the essences of each nakshatra and trying to really pull that out as much as I can. Um, and so there's another side to this, like talked about the essence, what's most essential. But there's also that side, that insignificant. Like it's like even in the world, the most essential people holding this whole world together. And it depends, I guess, how you look at it. On the one hand, it's the leader, it's the boss, it's the king on top who's who's setting the pace and making the order, I guess. On another perspective, it's all those masses that are on the bottom holding everything up. So it's that solid structure that allows the king to have power. And so it's like we have to take care of our body if we're going to achieve the highest spirit. We have to be of healthy body, mind, and soul. It's almost like steps, even in yoga. And this is why we sort of forgive all these Western yogis who are bending over and touching their toes for spirituality, because we sort of realize that, okay, they're just focused on their body and trying to figure out who they are and get comfortable in their body. That's going to bring them naturally to that next step, and they'll start to work with their mind and figure out what the relationship is between body and mind. And then they're going to start to see the relationship between the spirit and the body. And I think, in a sense, Shravan is more, almost seems to me, it's more concerned with the spirit and the body, with that foundation, with the land uh, in which they got to plant the seeds and everything like that. They got to order the land, but then they're concerned with what comes up top of that wheat, in a sense. So it's sort of top and bottom, sort of like that. Talk about steady progress. Okay, let's get into some people. So as usual, the Ascendant. I'm never very comfortable with this because it's hard to say, but you get some cowboy characters. Even Jim Carrey's sort of a man of the people kind of guy. Jack Welch was a great CEO as well, but still really a man of the people and very again, that big boss was able to adjust for the masses and his products. I think Jack Welch, was he General Electric? I should have him looked up, but that kind of thing. Lots of engineers with this sort of thing. Lots of sort of loud people as well. Let's just skip the sun because I'm never comfortable with the ascendant. Um, so we get the sun and Shravan here. Right away, we get some advisors to the king. Uh, we get some top sort of people. We get someone like Wayne Gretzky. Sun is going to be the father figures. And so this is really with the sun and Shravan is really these people. It's the father that does have them up early in the morning, oftentimes taking them to work or getting out. Wayne Gretzky's case, it's like get out there and practice. Shravan's really like, well, they'll really practice a lot too. And it's that those early mornings, it's get out there and get up there and get to work sort of idea. And they really do want to reach the peak. They want to climb to the top. They feel sort of entitled to lead their whole lives. They've maybe been considered a kind of a leader of some kind, and so their whole life is kind of focused on that. Uh, there is some. It's like even Wayne Gretzky. I sort of wonder how much of this Shravan has to do with his sporting ability, and how much of the Shravan has to do with all these sports guys who get into advertising. And advertising very much. Advertising and marketing is very strong in Shravan as well. Again, that amplification of the message comes up there. So we get this. One thing I skipped over that in the health thing. It's the whole story of Shravan with Bali. There's this part in there where Shukracharya goes into the water spout to block the water, to block the rain, whatever you want to say. And they use a piece of grass to open the water spout again to break the dam to a certain degree, get the water flowing. The Shravan always needs to keep flowing. But he pokes out Shukracharya's eye, and so you see a lot of this. You see a lot of eye problems also coming out with Shravan placements. And so there's just someone who died early blind. I can't remember. Ben Underwood, someone who was blind. They died very early in their life, very young, born blind, died blind, sort of thing. Some farmers here, like Daniel Marie, Steph's farmer, Daniel Balabane's also very much a farmer. Oh, here's Hinton. It was interesting. This is something I found interesting. This what made me think of the 10 avatars as well, because so many times while I'm doing this, there's a farmer beside a fisherman. Um, so there's as much people working with the land as working with water in here. It's really kind of there's a lot of both in Shravan. Um, yeah, so
Hinton
it's
is
like
a farmer and a fisherman. Hinton is a farmer and a fisherman, and Sun and Shravana. Just makes
yeah,
so much sense.
yeah, it's yeah. So they're kind of I guess fishing is kind of farming the sea in a sense is what they've looked at it as. Um, and so and I don't want to say just fishermen because there's like a naval officer. I've got some other friends who are fishermen, captains, carpenters. Go ahead, Emmett. I saw you.
Yeah, sorry, just I know you say the 10 avatars of Vishnu. Isn't there 1,000? Or is there 1,000 names and 10 avatars? Or what is I guess I'm
Yeah, there's probably 1,001 names of Vishnu and 10 avatars. Um, Vishnu Sahasranam would be the the name. It's another name for it. It's not coming to my mind offhand, but yeah. Anyway, so the 10 avatars. Um, and yeah, again, the water keeps coming up. That deluge of water sort of keeps coming up here as well. Um, a lot of chemists had this as well. A lot of people working chemistry, biology, these kind of things, also working with the waters of the body. Um, I mentioned there was a lot of like rapists, serial killers. Quite a few of them had placements here. And again, I think there's that sort of sense of disturbing what is pure. Take that pure land and they plow the first to plow the field, the first man, the Manu, the the Noah and his ark, that kind of thing. So a lot of sporting people, equestrians. I saw a bit of that here. People working with horses, racetrack type stuff. Um, I'm not really sure. Maybe these people get into the announcing side of that, some of these sports. And so maybe the shoving has to do with that as much as it has. But working with the horses, working with the land, that kind of farmer mentality down home, sort of an idea there. We do get some really great speakers that have it. Cicero was like, he's one of my, I don't know if I've mentioned him before. He was one of my big gurus, you could say, early in studying Hellenistic philosophies and the Greek Senate. Cicero was sort of, he tried to defend the Senate against the excesses of Julius Caesar and Mark Antony, who wanted to be basically dictators. And so Cicero, he was trying to protect the people. And there is a sense of that. There's that responsibility to protect sort of comes into this as well to a certain degree. Responsibility to protect, responsibility to preserve, maybe responsibility to maintain, but there certainly is a responsibility that comes in here. Um, we think of the shaman really puts me in mind of like the moisture that's in the ground, the liquids that are in the ground, because you get this like John D. Rockefeller. There was some mining guy here as well, Hubert. Anyways, a big one of the big guys into mining in the U.S. Um, so sort of extracting these sort of things from the ground as well. It's like the ground sort of absorbs water, but then you get all these layers. And so you go down deep enough and you get these kind of oils and different minerals as well. And so there is that sort of thing going on here. We talked about all the layers of the earth, the geology, that kind of thing as well. Quite a few boxers have Shravan placements here. And I think that's that like the boxer's like this, and he's unmovable in a way, right? He's like a rock. People are just chaos around, and they're fighting, they're beating him, and the boxer is kind of that stone, and he has that steadiness, that firmness, um, kind of a non-reactivity, really, is what's going on in Capricorn to a certain degree. Um, Able to remain sort of firm in all of that. But again, with the sun here, this is sort of these kind of express themselves in that sort of low, common way, like a farmer, like a handyman. Even if they do get rich, like John D. Rockefeller, founder of Standard Oil, one of the richest men in the world at one point, probably still expressed himself like a farmer, a man of the earth sort of idea. Um, Cicero was actually criticized a lot for that because God, I can't remember all the languages went like that, but he sort of spoke in a more common vernacular, and so it was kind of like exciting that Cicero became this great orator in the Senate because he sort of had this common way of speaking. Um, Dick Cheney, John D. Rockefeller, they probably have some similarities with the oil and oil business type stuff. Clark Gable, frankly, my dear, I don't give a damn. He was really that strong, probably a good example of Sun and Shravan. He was really that strong leader, that strong sort of masculine figure. Uh, Very well, he had some, I'm pretty sure he's got some Venus involved. There's some Saturn Venus thing going on. But very beautiful sort of a guy. Dana, was that you just doing that? Or did I? Okay, just saw something out of the corner of my
Sorry,
eye.
sorry. Just turning on the light.
Yeah, swatting flies, whatever. Yeah. Yeah, I just saw your something in the corner move, like that. So we get that sort of down home way of expressing. Get some country musicians like this. Hunter Biden, it's like his dad is the president. This guy's like a hillbilly sort of idea. James Joyce is another one. He's like this avant-garde novelist, one of the greatest literary achievements in the whole world. Nobody can understand a thing James Joyce reads or writes. Uh, there's a bit of spirits of adventure there. Someone like Charles Lindenberg. Um, some of the, and maybe this is just because I have some of the best, the only sort of sports stars I have are some of the best, but a lot of them are really they were able to negotiate record-breaking contracts. A lot of these people, really big contracts, and I think that some of that like seriousness in the way they express themselves, and that sun is sort of unmoving and unchanging. So it's like is what they say becomes the rule. This is it. And so they might be very difficult people to negotiate with. Again, they're that stone and everybody else has to like move for them. These are kind of they're not going to move and negotiate with others. So I think some of them got some very good contracts and probably very good sort of negotiating style in a way. Um, although farmers aren't really known for their negotiation savvy because they're too stubborn a little bit, too unmoving to a certain degree. It's interesting. This autism, person with autism, there's also Jamie Brewer with Down syndrome has this. It's a little bit hard to find people with uh, whatever developmental disabilities or these kinds of things because they don't come to astrologers, right? And so that becomes a little bit difficult. Person with autism contacted me and just sort of said they read something I said, and they were kind of like, "Oh, I don't know if you'll find me interesting or not, but I like Vedic astrology and have autism," and so they just told me all about them. But autistic people are also they're very the way they express themselves is also very dry, right? They're not very personable people. They don't get along well with others very easily. And that could certainly be said for a lot of these people that have this placement. A couple of them got made it in election politics, but most of these people don't get along very well with others. Even Oprah Winfrey, famous, nobody really likes Oprah Winfrey. Phil Collins, everybody says he's a jerk. Jackson Pollock was famous for being a jerk. Oh my God, all these people are jerks. Sorry, Dana, I'm sure your partner's a very lovely man. Um, but there is, it's probably like it's like these people are unmoving and unyielding, and it makes them hard to deal with. They're hard to talk to. They're not going to change their stance very much. And Sun is really like probably the more unmoving planet to have in Staben, right? Because Sun is singular, it's one. Only one person can be at the top. Only one person can be right. Only one person can sort of one person has to be the boss, and they're sort of entitled to be that person. Go ahead, Emmett.
Yeah, they're kind of the people that just take off on a boat and live their own life.
Yeah, yeah, they are kind of, yeah.
He isn't a jerk, but it's true everything you say. Like he's unmovable. Like he's the
Yeah,
kind of person like someone could be like fighting against him and he will be just so calm and not move. And I always say like if you're in an interrogation, if you did something, they will never put you in jail because
yeah.
you will just be there like
But that's the other thing about this. You can trust these people generally, right? They're not going to spring any surprises on you either. And so that's especially women would quite like these men. That's that sort of masculine quality that women are looking for. That sort of leadership. That yeah.
It's
Um,
honest, it's honest and genuine. So you know you can kind of trust it. Like it's straight up. Like this is how it is. What you see is what I'm doing. Yeah.
exactly, and especially with the sun there, it's really that. It really is straight up, um, like that. So it's very much that way. There's a few of these big baseball players have this. I think that sort of deals maybe it's dealing with the field. Again, the baseball field, the football field. We had some players there. There's that sense of the field there, but there's sort of a, I don't know, there's something else going on there with baseball, because I don't have many baseball players in here at all. I don't know anything about baseball. Uh, so when you see just a few baseball players with the same positions, it does suggest something. Um, oh, that's what it suggests. The arms, right? These baseball players, they're throwing this ball gazillion miles an hour. Um, you've got hockey players here who are hitting this puck gazillion miles an hour. You've got boxers. It seems there's something. And again, usually Gemini is the arms, but also Gemini is also usually the ears and our hearing and a lot of these sort of things that we're seeing coming up in Shravan. Maybe the ear is in Gemini, the hearing, but whatever the attention is in Shravan, right? Turning the attention. And really, in a way, if we think of it as being the eighth house from the third, from that perspective, it's like really whether or not you're paying attention is going to make all the difference in your hearing, in a sense, right? Whether you hear or not, that's going to change everything. So you got some of that sort of stuff coming out with Shravan. Uh, da, da, da. Skip ahead to Moon. Let's see if I got anything in here. Oh yeah. No, that was fun. Shravan. One of the things I found a lot with these Shravan placements is it almost seemed that mother and father are very different. In a lot of cases, the mother and father had different religions. One was Jewish, one was Catholic. Uh, you see this also. The father was an engineer, the mother was a musician. You're seeing there's a lot of that strong difference coming into this. Um, so that kind of things. Yeah, here we're seeing who is this James Joyce with his eye problems when he was a child, big Catholic family, blah blah blah. His father had a big problem with the church. Uh, um, and so he went on as well. Oh, I don't have it here. But anyways, he went on. He was quite critical about the church. And I think that's some of that practicality um, of the father. Oh, there we go. Cicero. Cicero actually means chickpea.
Is that the case for your partner, Dana, where like the two parents kind of argued like that on different belief systems?
Not so much maybe the belief system, but it's true that his father was an engineer when he was, because his father died when he was very young, but his father was an engineer and his mom always was like this very strong businesswoman doing her own like completely different thing, working with
Okay.
water actually. So
Okay.
yeah,
Yeah.
two different. But yeah, she was maybe not. I don't know about the religion, but I know his mom was born in Pakistan, grew up in Sri Lanka, and his father like grew up in Liverpool, and they met in South Africa. So like also two different
Okay.
backgrounds. Yeah.
Yeah. I think so. Yeah. Um, there was a lot of, where are we now? This is in the second. Yeah, there was a lot of like the son in the second house here. It was almost like the father in the store, right? And that's a good word for the second house is the store. It's that place where we store things. It's a place of storage. And that's really what a lot of these stores are. It's like a place where they got a bunch of stuff on their shelves and you can go and buy what you want in a sense. And so sun in the second house really relates a lot with the storage and the storage and stored goods. There's oftentimes there's a point as well I found, especially with the second house, where there's often a struggle in their early life. Sort of this blue collar father sort of loses his job or becomes sort of insignificant somehow. Um, and then maybe again works his way up. Certainly, these people who have this shaman are able to. A lot of them have done quite well, but the father is often it's like sort of this father who's sort of fallen on tough times to a certain degree, and somehow running the store, running the business, these kinds of things. So we see him coming into theater. This is this is Paul Newman, and I think there was that sense of the amplification of the voice. Cool Hand Luke, which is very, kind of a cocky prisoner in a forced labor camp, I think. And there is, I think, that sense of forced labor as a child when son is here. It's like the father's taking you to work with him, not just his watch. You're like slave labor to Papa. You're coming in there and you got work to do. Papa's really cracking the whip. Papa's the boss, man. And so you got to really listen to him. So there's that side of it comes here. Um, you can see I did a lot of research on Sun in the second house here. All kinds of stuff for you guys to look at. Gone with the wing, with the wind. Um, Divorce is going on. Anyways, this is stuff. This is all stuff. You guys can look at this later. Um, in the third house, though, it seemed that Sun is like, I don't know. Whenever I see Hunter Biden and Johnny Rotten, these guys, these characters are like, these guys are criminals, man. And so it's like head of a criminal gang sort of idea, head of the group, head of the band, leader of the band. All of these things are sort of Sun in the 10th house. But Sun has that strong responsibility of keeping order in the group. And it's kind of like again, the group's like an unruly bunch sort of thing. And the Sun has to keep that order of right? They're trying to maintain something. They're trying to keep something organized. So they're a bit of an unruly bunch. It's like Oprah Winfrey. I remember I don't know, she probably still has a show on. God, I have no idea. But when I was a kid, I remember watching Oprah Winfrey shows, and this was like in the 80s. And this was like, well, this was Jerry Springer before Jerry Springer. This was like chaos was breaking out on her stage. It was going wild. Everyone crying and screaming and fighting, and it was just it was wild. And Oprah Winfrey's job was to maintain the order, maintain some kind of decorum in and amongst all of this chaos. So, and there was that sense she has to listen to the group, listen to everybody. Uh, Wolfgang Mozart, music composer, if I'm not mistaken, I think he was deaf as well or had some hearing problems as well. Um, String theory. String theory has nothing to do with strings, but strings keep coming up in Shravan, right? There's so many guitar players, there's so many working with the string players, these nice, neat lines and rows and everything lined up nice and neat. And yeah, so I think that's these physicians and chemists we see also. You can imagine these nice, neat rows of bottles and little tinctures and whatever these chemists are working with. Um, Here we get Sun in the fourth house. See a lot of the music. Again, it's like there's the drummer and there's the beat, but I think more of the sound of the equestrian, where it's a little bit offbeat, a little bit. You know what I mean? It's not a dum dum. It's not a steady rhythm. It's a dum dum diddle dum 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 diddle dum dum. There's a change up in there, like a horse is walking, clump 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 kind of thing. So there's that kind of thing. More oil business, blind, early death, farmers. So Sun in the fourth, then these kind of like maybe the boss of the land, really, or the one who really the decision maker in the area, sort of idea. That one unique standout person. You can see it in a sea of just common farmers. The Sun here is that one that stands out, right? That one farmer who's kind of head and shoulders above the rest somehow. So Franklin Emergency Conservation Works, Civilian Conservation Corps. This was like land conservation project. Well, Franklin Roosevelt did. He built a lot of the parks, and a lot of the land, the parkland that we're using now, came from that conservation project. Like that. Transpersonal psychology, naval fighting. See, it's like I look at these names and okay, Roosevelt and Sarkozy really makes very powerful leaders, maybe good for politics, I guess. We think of that amplification of the message, so getting up there in front of the big crowd sort of idea and amplifying your message, getting the message out to a certain degree. This would be a sun ruling here. Yeah, sun's ruling the 12th. I was going to say this must be sort of a conflicted sort of position for the sun. Um, he's in the fifth house. He's there to amplify the message, but he's there to sort of like he's putting too much order to the stage, maybe order to the kind of order, command, and dominate the politics sort of to a certain degree. Um, Too much, and that's maybe a little bit dictatorial, a little bit too commanding. And so you can see some commanders and sort of very powerful leaders here. There's some marketing. Some of that always comes in. And I'm just going to go and kind of go through the sun, and then we'll kind of pick things up a little bit. Independence is the recognition of the fact that yours is the responsibility of judgment. Nothing can help you escape it. That no substitute can do your thinking, as no pitch hitter can live your life. That the vilest form of self-abasement and self-destruction is a subordination of your mind to the mind of another. The acceptance of an authority over your own brain. The acceptance of assertions as facts. To say so as truth. His edicts as middleman between your consciousness and your existence. This is Ayn Rand. I don't know if you know Ayn Rand. They call it objectivism, but she's very independent, and she's heavily criticized as her philosophies being one that doesn't really stick together, but it's really focused on the individual and the individual raising to their own highest peak as being in the best interest of everybody. Now, this got a lot of criticism, for one, because it wasn't really a philosophical system that stuck together very well. And two, because it also becomes it can easily lead to sort of the serial killer kind of mindset, right? Everything for me, for me, for me, for me. Um, so like that. Defiance, not obedience, is the American answer to overbearing authority. And so that's sort of the sun has, they can be defiant because they're the boss, right? And so if anybody else tries to boss them, well, they're just going to say no. It's as simple as that. And so that's that sort of defiance is the American answer to the overbearing authority. Um, So kind of thinking exemplifies an overabundance of masculine energies. In many ways, she is correct. The vilest form of self-abasement and self-destruction is the subordination. In some sense, this is hell, right? Being subordinate to someone else is hell for these people. It's like if your partner had to go and work for someone, right? Work in a fast food restaurant or anything like that, be someone else's subordinate, they can't handle that. It just wouldn't work. They'd be like, no. Maybe if it's a really good leader, right? Like they got something to learn from that leader, maybe. Um, but otherwise, if it's not a good leader, they're going to tell you you're not a good leader, and that's not going to go over well. So again, these eye problems. This guy's an eye surgeon, but that came up a lot. We see the highway rapist, Daniel Bellard. Um, yeah, again, maybe we're thinking of getting those obstacles along the journeys and things like that, the obstacles that they're going to hit along the way. And Daniel Bellard is one of those obstacles. He was implicated in influencing Scone Bank authorities, granting scam loans to controversial Hallmark group. He denied the allegation. Okay, so there's some allegations there. That has nothing to do with anything. We'll go through this. I want to go fairly quick. It's interesting. In seventh, we found a lot of like 6 marriages. Norman Mailer had Karina Bohom 4 marriages. Lisa Marie Presley 4 marriages. I get the sense that Sun and Shravan in the 7th house, these people can line up their partners. They have to like organize them, right? There's a little bit, they have to think about it. There's a hierarchy to their partners. So that means they've had a lot. And it's even like Daniel Bellard, the highway rapist. Obviously, he had a lot. Someone like Cristiano Ronaldo, he's like a sex symbol of soccer or something like that. So he's probably lined up his partners quite a bit. Shakira also, again, we get that quite a bit. Be interesting about Jamie Brewer because she's got Down syndrome. She's an actress with Down syndrome. Often plays a kind of mystic, sort of an actress as well. Yeah. They're finding more blindness, more autism. Um, it's funny. Autism, okay, autism, we think, oh, okay, autistic people are mostly almost non-functioning, but there's higher functioning sort of autistic. I can never pronounce. I always forget how to pronounce the word. Burger. I I'm waiting for someone to fill my word, but it's a Ochburgers, Aspergers. That's what it is. Burgers. Um, but Asperger's it's a kind of a light form of autism. So they're still functioning, but they're a little bit dry, right? And I think that's that Sun and Shavan, that way that they express themselves is that dryness that we can see sometimes comes out through Asperger's or autism. So yeah, just a lot of blue collar guys. Nolan Ryan's father had him up. He was delivering newspapers. Wayne Gretzky had him up doing chores, early morning chores. It's that Sun in the 9th house. And so that one who's giving you direction is the same one who's waking you up in the morning, sort of idea. The coach and the father in one um, kind of thing. And so they did pretty well. Their father's usually, anyways, these people, they learn order. They learn the like, Papa is like law and order. Papa's gonna like he's laying down the law, man. You're not going against Papa with this sort of position. Um Oscar de la Hoya, Justin Pollock. So we'll go through this, go to get the moon. The preservation of peace and the guarantee of man's basic freedom and rights require courage and eternal vigilance, courage to speak and act, and if necessary, to suffer and die. For truth and justice, eternal vigilance, that the least transgression of international morality shall go undetected and unremedied. So that vigilance is a good thing for Shravan. Shravans are very vigilant. We talked about with that over attention of trying to listen and being aware of any problems and maybe this is why it works for people on a boat because you really have to be vigilant, right? Any little problem on a boat, you got to be on there. You got to maintain the boat. You have to. It's like life or death. Um, so the classics say that the person moon and Shravan will be the governing class, will know the Vedas, be proficient in pure knowledge, revered by the Brahmins, the gods, will have an exalted, liberal-minded spouse. He will live in foreign countries, be wealthy, famous, have few sons, many enemies, troubled by several expenses, be the Lord, be happy, a good orator, poetry, sexual love, and munificent. And so I think the thing about expenses and things like that, I think that's just this constant maintenance. right? Always kind of maintain things. Um, the there's the sense that I think with the moon here, again, it's more that feminine side, and so the moon here is more that field to be plowed. That's where the sun here is like these are the ones that are going to plow that field. Where the moon is here, it's more that open field to be plowed, that open space. And they want to conserve and preserve and keep that space functioning. So we'll get into the names here. So you get even the popes. There's that modernization of the church. Pope Pius the eighth, who's that archaeology, looking back in time, trying to learn the lessons of history in a sense, I think was what some of them are trying to do. We got some very powerful Tubby Joes, Baba Ramdev, David Frawley. Like this is the top three yogis who have reached out to the West. And they've been able to amplify the message of their culture, amplify the message of their land, and get it out there, kind of amplify that sort of yeah, whatever they've picked up, I guess. And so you get someone like Vladimir Lenin, that communist sense. There is a bit of that communal sense here. Well, if fourth house is the commune, then Chauvin is the boss of the commune. And I know there's not supposed to be a boss of the commune, but there's always a boss of the commune. Um, it's just inevitable in a sense, right? It's like we're all working together, we're all equal. Give it a week, and there's going to be a boss. Um, and so Chauvin is the boss of the commune. We see the cooks, we see physicists, antivirus, um, comedians, John Lennon, assassinations. There's a lot of that. Maybe I just have a lot of those people. Uh, Dairy farmers, construction, gym teachers. This Charles T. Hunt is Chauvin in every which way. Charles Mates Manson has this serial killer number one. Then we got serial killer number two. Anyways, they're scattered all the way through this. I was coming on to a lot of serial killers. Um, King Haile Selassie. Again, a lot of these people, their job is to set order, to maintain order, order of the church, maintain the old laws, these sorts of things. Biker construction. Yeah, he was kind of a striker. He was kind of a biker, but maintaining order. Tires, just common blue collar sort of people for the most part. Even if they do get rich, even if they are kings, as a blue collar, they grew up in that culture um, of community in a sense. That's sort of what the commune means. It's like the Shravan is the boss. Okay, they're the leader. They're the one, the highest. They've got all the skills, blah, blah, blah. But they sacrifice themselves for the others. Um, and there's always that self-sacrifice. It's like the father, right? He's sacrificing himself. He's going out and taking the worst jobs and sacrificing himself for the family. So there's a lot of that sort of thing going on here. Uh, Personal sacrifice. And maybe that's that work ethic of brings a sense of personal sacrifice. But these guys certainly have it. Very strong work ethic. Um, there we go. Yeah, I find Moon and Shravan in the Ascendant, these people are usually like, they're very well known in society. They're not leaders, they're not big boss people, because that's the moon here now. And so they're more reflective of the moon is reflective of the of 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 the environment, I guess. Um, and so the moon is always going to work and be much more adjusting to the environment, where the sun in Shravan is very solid and very unmoving. the moon is going to make more of those adjustments. Even like the marketing, you've got to adjust things for the audience. And so they'll kind of do that with the moon here. Very careful about what they say, very careful with their speech. This is second house, yeah. So we're dealing more with speech type things. Very nice rhythm to the speech and this sort of thing. Common parlance that everybody can understand to a certain degree. Moon in second is always going to be more wealthy. This is ruling the eighth, and so there's probably going to be some kind of an inheritance here. This is interesting. So Brandon Lee, and there's a sort of like doing things as they were done before. But Brandon Lee died early, the same as his father, Bruce Lee. So that's kind of interesting. And there is that eighth house rulership, and so that transformation of the family and the wealth, and that sort of moving, fast turning movement of the lineage or something like that. I don't know. But anyways, that's kind of interesting that they both died early like that. There was a lot of early deaths here, and I think that is that self-sacrifice. These are the ones who will put themselves into harm's way to a certain degree to help others, like a hockey goaltender in a sense, or Captain James Cook, these great naval explorers that went out there. John McAfee, he was another one living on a boat full of like risking himself to warn us about these conspiracy theories and then promising that if I die, I didn't kill myself. And then a week later, oh, look, he killed himself in jail. Was that John McAfee? Yeah, he's the crazy guy out on the yacht. And there is that sense of security and protection, antivirus. That's like the cop of our laptop in a sense. Emmett, you look like you're on the edge of your seat. You want to say something? No? Okay. um, so here in the fourth house, it's going to be more of that education, come much more into that educational infrastructure. David Frawley's built God only knows how many schools. I don't know about some of the others, but it is going to be that more of that infrastructure in the home for education, for learning, that infrastructure that's going to help people to get ahead, help people to rise up, help people to climb. And so it's going to be all that kind of thing. Leadership sort of education, you could say. This might be.
Yeah, John McAfee ran for president in 2020.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
Okay.
for libertarians.
Okay. Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, he's very, very libertarian. There is a bit of a sense to Shravan that is a bit libertarian's not the word, but they want to be self-sufficient, I guess is maybe the word. As much as that lends itself to libertarianism, there is a sense of self-sufficiency with Shravans. This is my land, this is my space, I have everything I need right here. Kind
And
of
it's
thing.
kind of like you're saying too, like it's the commune. Like the commune has everything it's need. Everyone has a role, everyone has a place. And it's like Shravan wants to be the one to organize that. So like the way that like I've worded it before as someone who's kind of put in those situations, like it's the community organizer rather than the boss, right? So it's like they end up
Yeah,
looking like the boss, but really they're just managing the interpersonal relationships and the roles so that people can be their best selves. So it's like, yeah, for
that
someone
sounds
who,
like that sounds like a Venus boss to me. A very kind of weak boss. I'm just allowing people to reach their best self. Where the boss is like, pick it up. You got to do better. You know, you can do better. I know you can do better. They're not, there's no passivity in that teaching in a sense. It's like, yeah, get to work, boy.
awesome, I get it. Thank you. That makes so much sense. It's like
Yeah.
spot on, spot on.
Yeah, so that's that. Yeah, Venus just Venus is not a good leader. It's like putting that pretty little girl as the leader. Like nobody's going to listen to her, right? I don't care if she can do it. I don't care if she's got all the qualities and the education. I don't even care if she has the experience. If she's too sort of pretty and delicate and too refined, nobody's going to listen to her, right? But you put up like a tough man with a little bit harsh and rough around the edges. Now people are going to listen.
And then yeah, like my moon's in Danishta and my ascending is Pisces. So it's just like I'm just beating to my own drum. It's like you guys do whatever the heck you want, but this is how it should go, and I don't care if you do it or not, kind of thing, because I'm just beating on my own drum over here. So like it's yeah, it's a super weak
Yeah,
leadership, but it's like I'm fine without having it in a way at the same time, right?
yeah. Well, that's kind of it. Yeah, you'll attract followers or you won't kind of thing. That attractive quality of Venus is using just sugar, just show, just niceness. Or a lot of the other planets in Shravan, like Saturn especially, they've got actual like hard experience, right? They're not just over there looking pretty, looking like they know what they're doing. They know what they're doing. Everybody knows they know what they're doing. You know? And same with Mars. It's like everybody knows Mars and Shravan. These guys got it, man. Just get out of their way. And Venus, I guess, is like, oh yeah, I go play with him, I guess. I don't know. Nothing's getting done. Well, hey, too busy playing. Um, too busy looking pretty, Emmett.
I'm so good at it though.
Oh, yeah, in a very Shravan way. Um,
Yeah.
yeah. So yeah, Moon and Shravan as well, isn't they're going to be leaders and they're comfortable with that leadership quality, but they're not like the hard, strong leaders of Sun and Shravan. They'll adjust, they'll listen to people a little bit. We think of like Marcus Aurelius. You want to know about Moon and Shravan leadership? Read Marcus Aurelius. Amit, I guess Dana, you guys all have it. What's going on here? Um, yeah. So he's your man. He'll teach you how to lead like a moon in Shravan.
Yeah, love it, love all this stuff. Always. Like anything I see of him, like, oh yeah.
Yeah, he's a I don't want to say a little bit emotional leader, right? He's connected. He wants to connect with his people instead of I'm the boss up here and you're the people down here. Shovin wants to be connected. Um, so there's that becomes quite strong. So let's just go to Mars and Shravan. So Mars and Shravan, this is where I really noticed the sense of space in Shravan and moving and the steps, really following the steps and following that systems to move. And if you follow all the steps, it's really easy to climb to the top of the mountain, right? Instead of climbing and grasping and, just use a ladder. Like, what's the problem here? That's kind of Mars and Shravan. Um, I don't know why everybody's got to make things so complicated. And so he gets to the astronomers. Galileo is the first one. Rajan Bose, electrical engineer. I think he might have made this Parashara software that I'm using. I think it might have been Rajan Bose. Um, and you get IKEA. You talk about putting everything in nice, neat rows. IKEA was the master of that and the logistics and things to move things and get them to where they to connect the it's really what the merchant is trying to do, right? It's that middleman that wants to connect the person who doesn't want to spend very much money with the best product they can possibly get without spending too much money, right? So it really wants to connect to the lower people, and that's really what IKEA was all about: keeping the price low, getting that into everybody's home, right? And we all know IKEA products; they only last like 6 months later. They're cheap, they break, and then you got to go buy a new one. But they do the job.
That's
Um,
where my shelves are from.
Oh, yeah, there you go. Yeah, those flimsy, breaky shelves. Um, but if you notice, IKEA probably has very sturdy shelves that they make that they put everything else onto. They put their flimsy shelves on very sturdy shelves. And so his organization and that whole logistics, you notice that about IKEA, right? Uh, they're using very sturdy ones, but they're selling you cheap junk. Um, so there's a bit of that in Shravan, but it's connecting. It's they're connecting the common people. Get some freedom fighters. Bhagat Singh, he killed a cop, but he was they call him a revolutionary, a freedom fighter back in the free India times, very early. Really, he wore this kind of rockish hat, like he's a playboy. You see pictures of Bhagat Singh. Um, you wouldn't imagine India in the old days. He was very British for anti-Britisher. Uh, and there seems to be that. Maybe that's that absorbent quality of Vaga. He absorbed the qualities even of his own enemies. And maybe that's what makes Shravan, Mars and Shravan so powerful, is maybe they are able to absorb some of those qualities of even the enemy, their competition, and use those qualities to win, to get to the top. Uh, because there is that, like Shravan, that's always the goal. Shravan always does want to get to the top. And so with the Mars there, they're adjusting, they're doing whatever they have to do to get to the top, and they're challenging themselves. So Mars, it's that constant challenge. Um, like that. Lots of military people, military kind of engineers. There was a lot of musicians had this, a lot of sports people, very active. It's like Mars is our activity. With Shravan, those activities are very well regulated. Like they know when they wake up in the morning, they know exactly what they have to do all day long. There's no wasted energy. They wake up and they're like, okay, I got to do this, this, this. They're not sitting there thinking, oh, what do I got to do next? Jeepers, I don't know, right? Meantime, their opponent's pummeling them. They're like, oh no, I got to do that, and then I got a combination, right? I got to do that, and I got to. They're they're working with the land. They're working kind of with the other to a sense. They're adjusting. They're like a dancer in a way, right? The dancer is always moving with their partner. And so with the Mars, they become very masters of moving with their partner, masters of moving in space and organizing that space in order to increase production and efficiency. Um, so yeah, that becomes quite important. All that really production efficiency, really, really important with these folks. We see we see the volcano again. We're seeing that coming to the mountain peak. Um, someone recently said, let's look at this chart. So I read it was a headline. I didn't read the article. I just read the headline. But that's not what I wanted. The headline said Michelle Obama is going to be the next president of the United States of America. I know, isn't that wild?
Like, they're just tapping on Obama's presidency. Like, let's make his vice president. Let's make his wife. Like, this whole family is going to become president off his reign, kind of thing. Like, okay, why not?
Yeah, they really did. She doesn't have a birth time for her chart. And so this is what I came up with yesterday. This sort of time, because she's nothing by herself, right? She's our
We don't
little
see the
Rohini.
chart, Mike.
What's that?
We don't see the chart if you have it up.
Oh, you don't see it up?
No.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, we just see your Nakshatra project document.
Okay. I probably did my sharing wrong.
We'll probably figure out that she's not born in the US either, and that'll become a thing.
Okay, maybe. Well, she was born in Chicago, Illinois, according to her on the wrong side of the tracks. Um, which is a bit there. So what do I got going on here? So here we got her partner is the big commander in chief. That's that exalted exalted Mars with Sun and Saturn in the ninth house, and she's got very lucky with her partnerships. She's famous for really weaponizing ideologies as well. That's one of the things that Obama's and Clinton's anyways are very, very good at. That's politics, I guess, really. That weaponization, using the law and order. I don't know. I got a sort of a sense that, well, Mars and Shravan, you see a lot of cops have this, a lot of those sort of people. But I got a sense as well that these people can use, because Mars is weaponizing things. So Mars can weaponize the law and order. Mars can weaponize the police department. Mars can weaponize the systems against people, which is also why it makes Mars so powerful. They're not only using the systems like an exercise system in order to improve themselves and really kind of perfect themselves, but they can also use those systems as weapons, basically. Um, and so quite dangerous that way. And so that's that use of ideology as a weapon to a certain degree when it's in the ninth house, anyways. Um, yeah, and I'm not sure. You see some quite powerful people. Um, this guy didn't. Where was he? Yeah, Beckett Singh, the freedom fighter, he killed a cop. So he wasn't weaponizing the police department. He was attacking. And so there was that competition there. That's that opponent sort of that Mars sets them up for. And so they're very, very powerful opponents. These are kind of the people that go up against the other leaders in a sense. Um, and that's why they're so powerful, because their competition is always like whoever's best is my competition in a sense. And so these people, Mars, and they become very, very powerful. You see someone like Seaborn Bucklow Jr. He was up and from Alaska, lawyer, politician, judge, but also worked search and rescue kind of things. You can imagine really down home, sort of a politician, really down home kind of a lawyer kind of a guy. Um, Jean Chrétien as well, I think, had some of that. Uh, also quite down home. And maybe it was the way he spoke. He had a bit of a speech impediment or speech problems, some paralysis on one side of his face. Um, and that's also, I think you might get some paralysis in Shravan as well, because it's unyielding, it's unmoving. And so even in the body, you're going to get body parts that become unmoving, unyielding. They're not moving like they used to. They're going to become seized up. Be a lot of stiffness in the body. John Chrétien's, I think it just hit that one side of his face. So you get the strokes and things like that, I think will come through here as well. Geologists, again, peeling back the layers, looking back at history. I think music as well can be like that. Like Danish does the symphony. And so it's like maybe it's all the layers playing together in Danishta. Whereas Shravan is one layer after another, right? You put your bass, you put your beat, you put your rhythm, you put your harmony, and you kind of layer everything until you get a nice song, sort of idea. And so that layering kind of comes through musically here. There's our meteorologist, is John Patterson. He was actually Canadian, moved to India back in the 1800s to teach physics, but he was looking at the ionization of the atmosphere. And I mentioned that earlier. There was another meteorologist, but they seem to be working with the higher levels of the atmosphere somehow. So whether it's a science or maybe it's just an understanding, maybe it's those layers again. Um, and it does seem like a layers that you have to kind of break through, especially with the Mars here, try to get through those layers, break through those layers. Um, Emmett, you
Yeah, it sounds like Shravana is like, especially in Mars, it's the action of putting everything together and getting all your pieces and actively putting them together. And then Danishta is kind of like you say, the symphony and the heart, like the end of everything, putting it together in Shravana.
Yeah, that's maybe a good way to look at it. It's like before the music starts, you got to everybody line up, everybody take your seat, take your places, order, silence. Danishta, boom, right? The drum, boom. Now it starts. So yeah, very nicely put that way. Um, Scroll through, we'll see what I got. 9 o'clock. We got time. I always feel like we got time, and then I spend an hour on one planet. Um, so there's still a lot I need to do here on Mars in the second. You're going to expect, oh, this came up, this land conservation. Mariska Haggerty, she was Law and Order. Um, my mom's crazy about Law and Order, so she's that main detective in Law and Order. Her father was actually a bodybuilder as well, and so that sort of regulation, that sort of Mars, is building things up. Again, that layers, and so building up the body to a certain degree there. I think in the second house there might be a bit of a uniform thing going on here as well, because Steve Irwin, he wore the conservationist uniform. uh, Mariska, she wasn't wearing a uniform in Law and Order, but there is sort of that. The Shravan uniform is like the farmer wears overalls. The When you go to the office, you wear a suit, right? So there's this kind of uniform service as well. It's very orderly, and so everybody's kind of becomes that lowest common denominator. Everybody wears the same thing. And so uniform is a uniform, whether it's a pair of blue jeans and a t-shirt, or if it's a nice suit, or if it's a McDonald's uniform, it's still a uniform, um, kind of thing. So in the third house, Bhagat Singh, he using bombs and guns, and we see electrical engineers probably working with something that's a fire and working with tools and combustion, race car driver people. So really able to work with tools when Mars is in the third house, fires, anything like that. We get the handyman in there. So and these things will also be very ordered, the way they do things, the way they work with their hands, the way they work with their arms. Um, their group and their team. These are kind of team leaders, team managers kind of people as well. And there's a very hierarchical structure in the team. Everybody has their job, and that's it. You don't do other people's jobs. Um, so that comes in. When we think of the team, well, it's not really there, but it'll come up in other times. When we think of teams, third house sort of deals with politics as well, because it's the party. Which party you belong to, that's also your team. Um, but here in the fourth house, we get the Mars in, uh, in Shravan in the fourth. So here we get Fedor Ivan Krampad. Again, he had no correct birth time. And I haven't looked at a chart in a long time, so I should have a look again. But this does make sense that the fourth, Mars would be in the fourth, because this is organizing the home. It's a lot of competition in the home. Usually a lot of like Jean Chrétien, he had so many brothers and sisters. It was like there was a sort of, anyways, a whole crowd in the home. There's a kind of a hierarchy in the home that had to be respected. Um, and it may have been an elder brother or something who was sort of head of the home rather than the father in this sort of case. Uh, and Jean Chrétien, I think that was the case. It was one of his eldest siblings he grew up quite poor, and one of his eldest siblings got some kind of a scholarship. I can't remember if it was for medicine or law or something. And so that eldest sibling got a good job and then helped raise the rest of the family after that. Um, so there's that. There is also that there's some security specialists, security of the land, protecting the land, um, and securing the space. And so this Mars and fourth will be very security orientated like that. Um, in the fifth house, it's not a great Mars here. It's not a great planet for here. So the fifth house can be very good at sort of winning competitions, really getting out there and being seen. but Mars is a little bit too risky. It's kind of like trying to be the hero in a sense. Mars and Shravan in the fifth. It's very, very powerful. They get out there, but they're kind of taking too much of a risk. They're kind of putting themselves out there a little bit too much. Like Steve Irwin, for example, he took risks and ended up dying um, from some mundane sort of thing. Now, I think I think he might have had some. Let's open his chart. Let's have a look at Steve Irwin. I think he's got Saturn, if I remember his chart correct. Oh, yeah, look at that. Saturn, Mercury, Mars, Ketu, Jupiter. Uh, sorry, just the first three are in Shravan, but he's got five planets altogether in Capricorn. And well, who more than Steve Irwin did more for wildlife conservation and land conservation and that kind of thing? Um, Shravan then also was a lot of like Saturn and Shravan is like, be careful. Always be careful. Don't climb on that. Be careful, Mama said. Right. And so they do learn to be quite cautious, but that's kind of like they're the ones who will bring the ladder instead of trying to scale the face. Um, Mars is a little less so. Mars is going to be less cautious. Mars is taking a lot of risks. And so you see a lot of frustration in Steve Irwin between wanting to take those risks and get very, very close to those animals to learn about them. Also, that there's that learning aspect as well coming in um, between taking those risks and getting close to those animals and being careful. Uh, and he was probably like it's not hard to imagine this in Steve Irwin as a little kid just climbing on everything and just like getting into everything and very rambunctious sort of a child. And you can quite imagine any kind of mother figures or adult figures were constantly like, be careful, don't do that, get off there, don't climb on that, don't do that. And that's kind of that Saturn in Shravan. It becomes too conservative, too sort of protective, too it doesn't move very much. He doesn't listen very well. Saturn. He's not adjusting too much for the new times and the modern times to a certain degree. But here we are in Mars, and so there's a lot going on. Good kind of warriors, like I say, they want to put themselves out there and kind of be the hero uh, to a certain degree. So we get in the sixth, you're going to find more problems, but these people are going to go very direct to fix problems. Um, it's interesting group here. It's quite a mix between sort of higher learning and knowledge, and even someone like Chris Martin. He studied like classical Greek and Latin in school. Um, and Galileo is who we study when we study the classics now. Uh, but in the sixth house, they're very aggressive to destroy any enemies they get in front of them. And so there's that side of them, but they're also usually very organized and usually very knowledgeable sort of people. Like even George Foreman, he became that more of a marketer, right? The George Foreman grill. You'll notice in the George Foreman grill, it leaves nice, neat lines on everything. It's a little bit like a Italian sandwich maker or whatever, right? It leaves those nice grill lines on there. And so that's in a way Mars and Shravan is just that. It's that heat. It's almost burning the lines right into burning the etching the pattern in stone, right? So you think of a boxer, it's like block, punch, block, right? And they'll practice just one thing until it's really etched in stone and it becomes kind of muscle memory. And so that's really the Mars and Shravan is making things into a kind of muscle memory like that. Um, get a lot of psychologists as well. Okay, there's that sense of listening people. They have to listen. They have to, as a leader, you've got to listen to all the people as a and adjust for them. Even as a boxer, you've got to have that awareness of what your opponent is doing. You're listening, especially with Mars here. They can really pick up subtle body language type things. Really becomes that active listening, that listening to the movement in a way. And so it's more dancing, martial arts, and things like that come into here. Um, and even people that are doing handyman and construction type work, they get into this pattern, this rhythm, and it becomes a muscle memory. They just do it. They don't think about it anymore. That's probably one of the biggest criticisms of Mars and Shravans, as they're so busy doing, they're not really, they often don't think before they act. Is probably the biggest criticism they have. They get into following the system, right? And they become a little bit followers in that way, um, just following that system. And it can bring them to the head. It's like someone like Christian Barnard, the heart surgeon, Bernard Provost, police chiefs. Um, Maybe they are also in charge of regulating the system and managing the system themselves to a certain degree. System managers. Here we get like someone like Donovan Bailey, George Foreman. These are athletes who later got into business. So business becomes quite important with them. And we had another astrologer, this Vihanga Bhavsar. She's an astrologer. Funny enough, I'm her husband's astrologer. So her husband doesn't go to his wife for astrology, he comes to me. Um, I haven't met her, I don't know her, so I can't say anything about her. So again, here's the systems, mathematical physics. What the heck was Bronze doing again? He has an AA rating. One of the few scientists that's got a good birth record. What the heck was he doing again? Really, a lot of system analysis. I can't remember exactly what it was. We got some more police chiefs here. More law and order in the 10th house here really becomes law and order sort of a position. Even the boxers, they kind of, put down the laws sort of and keep order. Boxers, bouncers kind of things. This is when Mars is in this 10th house. This is the 10th, yeah. This is who they are and what they do sort of becomes one thing. Like the boxer. Um, he is a boxer. It's who he is, it's what he does. Maria Haggerty. Gee, she's been doing Law and Order. She's like 20 years she was doing Law and Order for. So it's kind of who she is and what she does in a way. And it's funny to say that about her because she's an actress. She's not actually a cop. But she's gone through those motions of being a cop so many times. In a way, it is who she is now. Um, oh, yeah. In the 10th house, should point out as well that so the cops, this is also a really good position for surgeons, typically, although I don't have any surgeons that actually have it. Um, but it's also a good position for surgeon. I think the heart surgeon we saw up there earlier as well, should probably have a look at his chart again because I don't think he's got a good birth time, so I might need some rectification. I remember last time I looked at his chart either. Um, a lot of those charts when I made them and they didn't have a birth time, I just looked really quick and I thought, oh, let's try this one. And so I put something. So might need some work on that. But this seems quite law and order. And again, I think the law and order side of this as well is because they're extracting an essence. And so in a way, it's like what the cop is doing is they've got all these sort of theories that are out there, Sagittarius, all these different theories, and then they narrow it down. And okay, now we've got these 5 suspects in front of us, or 3 suspects in front of us, and now we have to sort of pick one, right? And so it's that looking for the essence, trying to extract the truth, is I guess what they're trying to do. and then they're extracting, they're trying to find that one criminal, that one person that they can sort of pinpoint their focus on. So Mercury and Shravan, managing, analyzing systems, systems analysts, kind of history buffs. You get a lot of writers that have this as well. Cryptographer, people working with languages, evolutionary biologists. Mercury is the planet of learning. I think generally Shravan's, again, not tap into that side of learning with Shravans, because you don't actually see many teachers that have this. But generally speaking, I think Shravan people are lifelong learners, is what it is. It's not so much this formal teacher student thing going on. It's these people are learning, absorbing things everywhere, learning, watching, listening, and they're kind of learning their whole lives. Um, and so we get this Mercury Shravan, are quite learning a lot to do with history. We've got a little bit of therapy, writers. I think that's maybe why writers are, you see a lot of writers with Shravan. That's also what they're trying to do as well. They're kind of picking up everything from the world around them. They're listening to everyone, especially someone like Norman Mailer. A lot of his books were sort of creative nonfiction. So he was going out and doing interviews, and he was sort of doing a bit of detective thing, trying to get at that truth, that higher sort of truth, that the um, practical truth. Because when we think of truth, anyways, there's not a lot in Shravan to make us think of truth, or in Saturn to make us think of truth. Truth is sort of in the sun. There's this higher truths that we're looking for in Sagittarius. Truth in Shravan is a practical, before your eyes, actually existing thing. And so it's like the engineer. They put something on paper, but then they actually make it. It's actually there, a true, real thing in front of them. Like the land, like the ground that so many of these other ones are peeling back layers of. Um, Kickbox, a lot of sex crimes as well here. Uh, we had, what was her name? Anyways, we had the woman from Law and Order, but then we get Hannah Kristen Rode. And she was a real uh, sex crime cop working in sex crimes, and then later went off to be a writer and wrote a whole wrote some really great crime novels and things like that. Okay, just people close to the land, keeping it real. Very real. This is Mercury. This is their stories. Oh, they would probably be nice storytellers. First this happened, then that happened, and then that happened. Really sort of orderly in the way they communicate, the way they speak. You see a lot of them are Benjamin Franklin, Medici, Bloomberg, Rasputin, Wilbur, Jobs. A lot of them really are, although they might not be leaders themselves, they're very close to leadership, right? They're sort of advisors to the king. And so they're very, very close to those leadership places. Almost like with Mercury, good friend to the king, on friendly terms with the boss. Those kind of things might come up because Mercury is those kind of friendly terms. And you see someone like, well, Rand Paul, Brett Weinstein has this, does the podcast. Very friendly, nice man. Um, in a lot of ways. Boss game. What is this? Jamie Brewer, this actress with Down syndrome. She's got a few positions in Shravan. Bernadette Dorn Iyer, militant communist sort of woman. When I say militant, they rob banks and do all kinds of things to raise fund. So I'm not just not just people who are yelling. And so like that, George Washington, Rockefeller, a lot of Alexander Jodorowsky. He was doing what do they call it? A director, producer, director, film director, producer. And of course, those kind of people, film directors, producers, that's what they're doing. They're directing, they're organizing. I think there is a lot of the director sort of positions here as well. I mean, advertising, marketing. It's funny, my dad has some placements here. Um, as I've been looking at my dad's chart, and I think I finally got it rectified. It's hard to do these charts when they're personally close. It's hard to rectify charts. Um, but there's a side of my dad. I've started to wonder if he wasn't more of a gangster than I thought. Um, Man of the people, but a working man, you could say, and so some under the table things going on. And maybe I think that is that Mercury. It's that friendliness with the boss that allows people to maybe do some, like, Mercury would be like side jobs, right? Mercury's not serious work. Mercury's just a little bit of work here and there, and you pick something up and it's there. These people aren't serious. Well, I guess you got George Washington, you got a few pretty serious people, but for the most part, they don't take leadership that seriously. It's this way or that, and everything's a conversation in a sense. And I think there's a bit of like, what would you say? What's that saying? Anyways, kind of hens are running the house in a sense. It's like the kids are running things in a sense with Mercury here. Um, it's not the adults in the room. It's not like Saturn here, who's definitely the adults in the room. These are kind of the kids in the room. They're not really that serious or as serious as I think people would like them to be. They're the boss who's maybe maybe they've inherited their position or something like that. Um, right? The boss's son kind of boss. Those kind of characters. And this does not quite for everyone. For a lot of them, it really lines up. Um, Sort of a sense like that. Because Mercury wants to count, he wants to analyze, he wants to understand the system. And so this would make him very good at working with the systems. The systems analysts, for example, right? Um, and understanding leadership, talking, writing about leadership, maybe coaches, leadership coaches, the kind of person who maybe like, and this isn't going to be correct at all because right away I see Muhammad Ali and he became the best. But these are sort of the sort of people that become coaches because they can't quite cut it out in the real world. You know what I mean? Like I'll teach leadership because I can't lead. These kind of characters come in with Mercury in this to a certain degree. Um, Again, if you come on any charts you want me to open and we can have a look at, I'm very happy to do that. Not, we'll skip to Jupiter and Shravan. Man was born free, and everywhere he's in chains. Those who think themselves the masters of others are great, indeed greater slaves than they. So this is really Jupiter and Shravan. It's kind of the bully. This is the one who thinks they are the boss. And they take on all the boss positions they can get, and it's like they want to be the king of the castle because otherwise they feel powerless. And so this is man is born free, and everywhere he's in chains. Those who think themselves the masters of others are indeed greater slaves than they. And that's so true. It's like the bully. He thinks he's being the big boss man, bossing everyone around, but everyone knows he's a bigger slave to his own inner guru, you could say, than anybody. Um, so they're often hypocrites, virtue signalers who go against religion at every opportunity. The religion is just on the surface. They might be busybodies who have given themselves extra permission to lead. They tend to think they're better than others. They're often poor and are forced to conserve and preserve as much as they can. Even if they're wealthy and privileged, they'll still want to preserve and preserve. Kind of cheap bosses. They hold things back. They're not really like, this is the leader who's not really teaching. He's not really showing the people under him how to do things. They're kind of hoarding all of that power to themselves to a certain degree. So they cling to the reputation if it's the only thing that's important. Even though they don't actually have a very good reputation. They will not like to lose face or question themselves too much. That's one thing with the Mercury and stuff, and I think they're often questioning themselves. Whereas the Jupiter here doesn't want to question. They've always got an answer, whether it's right or wrong or whatever. Um, but they are the ones who have to give permission. That's kind of like, it's that boss who's micromanaging. You always got to have to go ask your boss for permission before you do anything. They're kind of treating everybody like children to a certain degree. Um, it seems like women in particular will find a partner or mate for purely practical reasons. Perhaps an arranged marriage, a duller partner, and not much hope in life. Even Princess Diana, who had everything, was never happy. She really didn't have much control over her own destiny. In the end, she was killed by her own fears, her own lack of faith, hope, and optimism. And the reason I said she's killed by her own fears, because she died running away from the paparazzi. And it's like, well, what are you afraid of? So Jupiter are a little bit afraid of being exposed in a sense. And so they're very much bound up in their own fears. Um, and like Princess Diana, she ran away from the paparazzi, running from her fears and ended up dying. And so they don't do themselves any favors by bottling themselves up and by being so defensive. So there's some dissonance with this position since Jupiter is exalted. He's not exalted, he's debilitated. Um, but he's in the star of learning. So that's kind of funny, right? It's a star of learning, but Jupiter's debilitated here. And that's maybe it. They already know. They don't have to learn everything. Like why? So they're not really they don't have to learn, they don't have to watch, they don't have to listen. Um, they're not the great open house providers like Jupiter and Cancers. They don't care much about the community. They care only about themselves and their power. Um, if they do teach, it's really going to be just a job and a duty for them. The lessons are taught from within the box without derivation. So it's just like, here's our lesson plan. We're reading from the lesson plan. Um, but it's all for show, and they're just diverting attention from one's own faults and failing. They're not the kind of teachers who you can question. They're themselves an authority. Blah 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 blah. So like Dwight Eisenhower, Jean Cabot was the illustrator at Charlie Hobo that got shot. He drew the bomb under the turban kind of thing. And I think it was that undercover that like peel away the layers and you see the terrorist was kind of his joke, right? Peel away the layers of the religious person and you get the terrorist. That's kind of what Jean Cabot's joke was. William Burroughs, again, also a bit of a preacher kind of guy, rough, dirty, but a guru figure, knew everything already. Dave Chappelle also knows everything. Certainly can never tell Dave Chappelle anything. They're generally more conservatives. Jupiter's beliefs, so more conservatives in their beliefs. But these aren't the conservative people. This is not the moon and Chauvin where they can adjust to the changing times. Jupiter's not adjusting to the change of times. That's the rule is the rule is the rule. It's just black and white. There's no adjusting. So too conservative, too much holding on to that ancient past in a lot of ways. Um, just as I say that, my eye catches Princess Diana and Boy George, um, and Toby Keith. Oh God. Um, and so none of them were very rigid, but they did know everything already. They weren't really there to be learn anything, and so there was some progressivism in their thing, but that was really a lot of times it's a bit of a Jupiter here. It's that misguided progress. They're going in the wrong direction. Essentially, it's not that the compass is broken. It's not that they're lost. They know where they're going, but they're going in the wrong direction. Um, is a big part of that. So Joseph Stalin. You see a lot of the dictators here, Jean-Jacques Rousseau. Life is brutal, nasty, and short. Ray Kroc, he's the guy that ran McDonald's. Um, yeah, some Renaissance man, some linguists. Buster Keaton, interesting. He's silent films. That sort of silence comes into there as well. That body language. Um, some Batman and Batboy. Batman, I think they use a cricket guy. Melissa Etheridge, Ghislaine Maxwell. It's like someone like Ghislaine Maxwell. She knows everything, right? And she knows what's going on. She knew what was happening, but she was doing the completely backwards wrong thing. And that's a few of these up here. Jitendra, Rodney, their clients. These guys are smart guys. They know but they're just idiots. They just always do the wrong thing every single time. Um, Jitendra's about to like. I'll open his chart. He'll probably appreciate that. Um, no, I shouldn't. I won't open Jitendra's chart. Too many crimes in there. Um, but criminals. He's sort of going into exile currently. We see some of the police officers, Pinkerton Detective Agency. This was that early detective agency, eventually became FBI, eventually became CIA. But in these early days, one of the problems with detectives is sometimes they often knew the answer in advance. They're like, oh, that person's guilty, and now I have to prove it. And that's kind of what the Jupiter and Shravan, they know the answer. They just want to, they got to find all the steps that lead to that answer. Um, and so it's deduction and induction get kind of reversed in a sense with this. That's that backwards practicing. But there are some philosophers here, police investigators, science fiction. Here's transplant surgeons, heart surgeons. We've seen a couple of that with Shravan, a couple surgery guys. And I think like part of it is to be a doctor, to be a surgeon, to work in healthcare, just that level of organization that you need to have. And doctors are often working backwards. If you go see a doctor, they're not going to look at your symptoms and add that to that to that to that means this. You're going to go in there right away. They're going to say, oh, you must have this. And then they're going to start to do a bunch of tests to see if they're right. Right? That's often how a lot of the modern doctoring works. They're like, everybody that comes in my office has this problem. So I'll just do the test and see if it's that. So there is some of that backwardsness with this Jupiter. Um, and they're just so practical. Their wisdom is too practical. It's like common sense, but just too common, right? They have no ability to really open their mind. Like we said, openness is the key to this nakshatra. When Jupiter is here, it's closed. It's like take a big ball of fat and just stuck it in the door, and that nothing can move anymore. And so we might look for those problems with fat in the body, with cholesterol and things like that in the bloodstream, right? And so when Jupiter's doing, he's blocking that openness. He's very closed-minded, closed people. Someone like Kant, they used to set their watch by Kant. He never left his village, like really closed in, very sort of narrow-minded people. Um, and I know Princess Diana is a big hero, but she was very narrow-minded. She had all these activist causes. She was such a confused person, right? And that's sort of one of the things like Lakshmi. Lakshmi, I know this is Saraswati, not Lakshmi, but Lakshmi, she's the goddess of wealth, and she's shown with an owl. Owl is the kind of vehicle of of Lakshmi. And this is to say that rich people are blind, rich people are dumb, they're foolish. Owls aren't, they're not respected like they are in the West. In the West, we always have this wise owl. So usually the one who can kind of see in the dark sort of area is how we see the owl. You can sort of see in that darkness. But in the West, it's this stupid bird that you can go out and they go out and what they do is they catch owls and they put them in a cage and they take them to the market and they sell them to dumb tourists who want the bird to go free. Oh, that poor owl, can you just set him free? And so they give the people a bunch of rupees, they set the owl free, and then the person goes back and catches the owl again and puts him in the cage. And so it's that kind of like, it's that narrow mindedness, that just small mindedness. That's often the purview of the rich, they say, but it's also the backwardness of the poor, right? So we can't just lay it on one side. It's like both sides, and Shravan's really dealing with both sides, right? It wants to connect the rich and the poor in a sense, but um, but they just have no vision. They're just so too narrow-minded. And here I am, I go, oh, they got no vision, and then my eye lands on Michelangelo's work, and but no, this still holds. He was an amazing painter, but he was up there and he was painting this thing under the worst qualities of light. And now that we have more modern lighting in some of these chapels, it's changed the whole painting. And they've said that because it was painted under a certain light, it was painted to look that way. And now we use these harsh lights that just take away all the shadows and just like light it all up. And it's too much. It's too glaring in a sense. Um, yeah, maybe that was Agatha Christie, right? That kind of making sure they go through the steps, they're making sure keeping things a little bit, always kind of holding something back. And that's as teachers, right? That's kind of how they are. They're always holding something back. Agatha Christie's detective novels, right? Kind of hold something back and it keeps the mystery and the suspense going. Michelangelo had it a little bit held back. And so there does seem to be Naomi, Genevieve. I think, Dana, I think you know Genevieve. Um, anyways, there's seems to be something that's always sort of holding them back. Um, and maybe it is a learning problem somewhat that holds them back to a certain degree, or these kind of things. Just can't really get that full open vision um, with Jupiter, and that's really the debilitation. So Zuckerberg, still find some people are very educated, right? Leon Battista Alberti, Renaissance man, cryptographer, linguist, architect, polymath, basically. Alan Pinkerton, these people are quite Priscilla Chan Zuckerberg. That's Zuckerberg's wife. She's like a computer programmer, same as Zuckerberg was, right? They have a lot of knowledge, they have a lot of wisdom, but somehow they're still very sort of narrow minded. They're just not open to anything really new. It's like McDonald's. Go in McDonald's and try to change their system, change the way McDonald's does things. Not going to happen, right? McDonald's is doing things that way, and that's it. Go ahead, Emmett.
And Jupiter in Vedic represents the husband as well, right? So if she has that, then it shows like a husband that would be more stern and like knows what's right, which represents Zuckerberg. Is that
Yeah,
accurate?
that also, yeah. Yeah, because the husband would have those Jupiter Shavan qualities. So the husband in this case could be a bully a little bit, right? The husband is always right. They always know everything, right?
And you get that from Zuckerberg, yeah.
Yeah. Um, and so that, and then there's going to be those other things. It's like the husband's maybe always working, but never really getting anything done, sort of idea.
Which
Kind
is
of
kind of
comes
what
in.
Facebook is.
Yeah,
You
exactly.
feel like you're working, but you never get anything done, really. Yeah.
No, nothing's ever happening. Um, yeah, that's exactly it. Because it's because you're caught in the algorithm. in a way, right? So you can't get out of that algorithm. You can't get out of your little friend circles. You can't get out of your little zone. And that's really, Facebook is a really good example of that. Those that getting stuck, bogged down kind of thing is Jupiter. A spoiled rich activist, Simone Biles was a gymnast, also kind of a spoiled kid. Um, really, Dave Chappelle's like a spoiled kid. God, there's a lot of spoiled kids here. So, yeah, we'll just call them all spoiled kids. Like Agatha Christie's interesting. There's one thing in Agatha Christie, and I keep trying to figure this out in her chart. So she wrote all these great mystery novels, and then she went missing for like 5 days. She just fell off the face of the earth. And as astrologers, it's our duty to solve that mystery. Where was Agatha Christie for those 5 days or 10 days or something? So, yeah, some philosophy, life being nasty, Brutus in short. It's just there's not a lot of hope with Jupiter and Capricorn, right? It's that idea like it's just all gonna fall anyways. It's what's the point kind of idea. Um, on one hand, and on the other hand, it's too much trying to control things, too much trying to put things in order, too much rigidity, too much unmovingness sort of idea comes in. Oh, that's interesting. The seventh here, we get Anandamina. He's a computer engineer, but he's also paralysis from his legs down. He can stand. I don't think he can walk. And so there is that. We talk about being unmoving. Well, there we go. There's unmoving for you. Guy's paralyzed. Um, Someone like Buster Keaton, he was a great, like almost a stunt man, but doing those silent movies, he was also there was a stiffness in the way they moved for those silent movies as well. Cam. So we'll just jump ahead to Venus here now. Oh, look at that. We're almost running out of time. So we go to Venus in the Shravan, and Venus is going to be more passive. Um, Rush Limbaugh, you got some commanders. What did I say about being weak leaders? But being a weak leader doesn't necessarily mean they're not leading. It's like World War I was famous for weak leaders, actually. World War I, because what they kept doing the same thing over and over and over, and they never really learned from it. They liked the beauty of their plan, but the effectiveness, it wasn't effective at all. And so the Germans sort of talked about this. They were like, after a while, we just felt bad because they kept just sending wave after wave after wave of their people into our machine guns. And they weren't learning the lessons from this. It just kept happening over and over and over. And it's almost like they just like the beauty of their plan. They enjoyed being leaders, but they weren't really doing anything in a sense. Like Justin Trudeau. Oh, look, he's there. And so he's like the weakest leader I think I can imagine. I don't think there's a weaker leader in this whole world at the moment. Um, and Kim Campbell, she was prime minister for like 2 months in Canada. Very weak leader, right? And then she did her little Playboy thing, holding a judge's robe in front of her naked body. Um, and so that's what you get when you get a female leader. Thanks, Playboy. Um, so we get a bit of that. Pope Francis as well. He sort of criticized being a little bit too progressive. And maybe that's the thing with the Venus here is they are too progressive, too much changing, too much adjusting for others without having that strong leader. Leaders got to have a strong backbone kind of idea. And that seems to be missing here in a lot of ways. You do get Mike Bloomberg. He was a powerful mayor. Rupert Murdoch. Uh, um, so I'm trying to think of, I see someone like Rupert Murdoch, that amplification of a message, but it's like, I don't know, is the message saying anything, or is it just for the sake of the message itself? Amplification for the noise for the sake of making noise kind of thing. Um, oh, jeepers. Yeah, then you got Tolkien and Lorenzo Medici. Again, here we're getting people, well, there's a few leaders, but again, these are people that seem to be very close to leadership themselves. They're not the elected leader. They're not the one who's got to have the strong backbone and take control. They're kind of well, because it's Venus, I want to say I wonder if they're maybe not the partner to the leader. Um, to a certain degree, but they just, I think really it's just they love the beauty of law and order. They like seeing everything in a nice straight row and all their I's dotted and T's crossed. They like seeing it, but I'm not sure if they're necessarily the one that's going to do it. Everybody stand out, attention. Go ahead, Dana.
I was thinking also because you said the Medici, he used to be the patron of the artists and of leaders, and so it came to my mind that maybe Venus and Shravana could also be like the ones that put money for political campaigns or are like the friend, like help leaders be in positions of power, the ones they like, like they think it's going to be in an orderly manner, it's going to make things better for everyone because of course it's Venus, but Venus is also money, right? So something to
Yeah,
do
so
with that.
I'm looking at the names, and it does seem very much, there does seem to be a lot of that sort of support for the leader, financing, showing the appreciation for the leadership. Um, I'm not sure if this would be paying before the leader does something or if you're paying after the leader does something. Um, Showing that appreciation for the past, for what's already been done, sort of idea. Um, so yeah, certainly some of that could be here. It's interesting that Catherine of Oregon has this. She was the one Henry the Fifth, or sorry, Henry the Eighth wanted to get a divorce from her. Um, but she was that sort of powerful matriarch leader as well, that sort of leading from behind the scenes as well, kind of that female leader. And so what she was doing was keeping kind of the home in order, but she also like she was really well known. Like she was doing her songs and doing her prayers, and really kept up with all the sort of almost status symbols of order. Status symbology is very important to shamans. There's a book. I should see if he's got his birth time. Alain de Botton. He has a book called Status Anxiety. He's got a few nice books. Um, and well, you guys I think are a little bit like snobs when it comes to knowledge, I think. Anyways, you got me as a teacher, so you must be a bit snobbish when it comes to knowledge. Anyways, so Alain de Botton, it's a very short and quick read, but this book on status anxiety, really, really brilliant book. Gives you all kinds of cures for status anxiety and everything. Really, really nice book. Um, but yeah, that certainly comes into play here. I think on the Venus side, it's more like the wife's status anxiety. She can't do anything to bring her status up, but support the husband, right? Support the leader, support the boss, give him as much support and appreciation as you can, and hopefully that'll come back and be good for the female boss wife sort of thing. Um, Yeah, let's just jump ahead. Let's do the Saturn because we're almost done. I don't know how 3 hours goes by so quick. So Saturn and Shravan is really, this is the administrator. Rule of law is the law. It's very black and white. Um, I found this interesting. Louis what is that? The 10, 5, 17th. Louis the 17th, he was the son of Marie Antoinette. He was tortured and killed in prison. And I think there is a sense, there's a little bit underground in the skeletons that are buried and things buried. And this is that very practical knowledge of what's underground. And I think in Louis the 17th's case, this was this little boy. And so he got to know quite literally the skeletons in the dungeon. Um, and that sort of thing, that practical knowledge of that comes into there. Um, some sound technology, really listening and very careful listening. Someone like Ray Dolby working with sound, Mozart also with sound, some country singers, Clint Black and Garth Brooks. I found it interesting, and I don't know, I've got quite a few musicians and country singers, but Clint Black and Garth Brooks were quite interesting because they came out almost at the same time, and it was almost like the white knight and the dark knight in a sense of country music, and they both really grew up, and then they both anyways, they were very similar in any case. Um, we see more of that land conservation, geology, again peeling back the layers of what's underground. Psychologists, quite a few psychologists had this. This is that Saturn. It's very practical. Um, very practical means of getting to the top or getting to the essence of a thing. Um, when we get to this third pada, wow, it's like Winston Churchill, King of China, King Henry VIII, Otto von Bismarck, Herbert Hoover, like really big time people here. Ruth Bader Ginsburg, the physician. We get senators. Lots of physicians have this. Actually, Jordan Peterson, one of his books was called Order, an Antidote to Chaos. I think that's very much the Saturn in here is really wants to just wipe out all the chaos in a sense and really wants order. And you see that with a lot of these kings, the miners, right? They can't even tolerate any of the underground sort of stuff because that's where the chaos is happening from a political perspective. Um, so you got that kind of stuff comes up. I think really a lot of these people really are really trying to snuff out chaos. They just can't stand any chaos. They really need order in their lives. We see this with some of the artists and the designers, uh, folk music singers. Oh, it was in here. Where was it? Anyway, some swing dance kind of stuff here. Farmers, farmer people. It's funny because there's some of the girls I know that have this placement. They come from extremely wealthy families, but yet they work as farmers. All they ever wanted to do is work the land. Um, right? It's kind of their mentality. Is that just simple mentality? Just wants to work the land and the rhythms of nature and connecting also with the land, but in a very practical way. Really getting in there, getting their hands dirty, kind of an idea. So that's Straven. Yeah, administration sort of stuff comes up a lot with the with the Saturn. I don't know. Is there any questions? We'll drop this now. Unless you got a question or comments. Anything I missed that I should have said that just been driving you crazy? I guess not. Then it's been a great pleasure to chat with you guys. And
Thank you.
happy Shravan and Mahadev. Har Har Mahadev.
Mahadev. Bye.
Bye bye.